All right, looks like we're live. It took a little while. All right, mic check. Okay, mic's on. I want to try to start the live with the microphone off. Did that a few weeks ago. Hope everybody's having a good week. Post a few recipe videos. I've been getting some of these videos on Facebook. Getting people getting creative with meads and a lot of other things. There goes notifications. So it's been posting those to the DIY and militia page. They're pretty interesting. One today was about infusion. There he is. What's up, white dog connoisseurs? Yeah, it's time to rise and shine, baby. What's going on, Steven? Good to see you, brother. Clint's on time tonight, man. I don't know what happened to him last week. I don't know if we ever did hear. He was just tardy. Oh. All right, let's get this shared and get this show on the road here. You know the drill. It'll take me a minute, so same as it ever was. Gotta go down the list. Shouldn't take too long because they're only letting me do about 10 to 12. So we'll get her done and get to chatting. Hopefully, some of the new people from Saturday will come back and we can chat with them a little bit and answer some more questions. Starting to get a little bit more interest. A lot of new people to the craft. I think a lot of the new laws and stuff have kind of opened some people's eyes. And I think a lot of people think that they can just distill at home now because of that law. And I think it's going to get a lot of people in trouble because that's not really the way it reads. But I wish that's the way it read. But there seems to be more and more interest in it, and I'm really glad. So I have to go down the list and then look on the list, and it's slow. It is a slow process. But we'll get them done. Get back in here. There's another notification from YouTube. Okay, we were on tips. Yeah. I know every week I say I'm gonna get on that, ask Facebook to do this and that, and I never do. So I'm just not even gonna say it. I guess I just did kind of, but we'll see how many they let me share to this time though. A lot of activity on some of the recipe groups, so that's good. It seems that there's a lot of people interested in recipes, so I want to try to increase getting mine up and some of these up. And they're not my recipes. A lot of them are just from all over and pulled up and saved from. All right, let's see. Where is it? Here we go. All right, that's those. Let's see how far down the list I can go now. We shall see. TikTok. Crazy. And right here is about where it usually stops. Let me do it. That's nice. Well, bang on it. Stops right there. Okay. I know where to go. All right, let me see. I'm trying to remember if this one went through or not. Let me check it. Hold on, bear with me just one more minute. I don't know if it went through on that one or I stopped at that one, so I need to go to that page and check it and see. Okay, so it did. Well, actually, I'm glad they got a live going on right now there. Like Jeff Mueller's live on there. There's a couple live on there, so. All right, so I know that's where we left off. All right, let me mark it. Got a few more shared though than normal. That's good. That's always good. I'll leave that page right there so I can get back to it. All right, let me welcome everybody in. You ate early. You ain't got nothing on the grill? I think you've been grilling since Memorial Day. What's going on, Seashine? Good to see you, brother. Oh, aluminum. I don't know. There's been a lot of contesting about aluminum. You know, in the boiler, absolutely not. Um, but I don't know. The distillate's not quite nearly as acidic as the mash in the pot. So the issue with using aluminum in cooking is with the acids and stuff. So certain things, I mean, we've cooked with aluminum for a long time, but they found that a lot of uh, pasta sauces, tomato sauces, and things that are pretty acidic like that. Some of it leaches, right, and pits, and you run into some issues. But for like boiling your water, hell yeah. Um, so I don't know. It's I don't try to be a doctor. I know there's a lot of studies out there that talk about how it affects a lot of the aluminum. Now there is certain types of aluminum that doesn't release the ions if it's a specific type of aluminum, but a lot of the cookware in the past and stuff, they found that pits and stuff, the old stuff, which I've got a lot of. My grandmother used to have big, huge aluminum pots, man. They're cast aluminum, they're thick as hell, and they're heavy. And I boil the shit out of water with them. Um, but for water boiling, that's all fine. But once you get something acidic in there, I would probably have to say no. But yeah, for boiling water, and steeping your grain in and stuff like that, it'd be perfectly fine. But I guess once you proof down your water, probably, 5.3, as long as it's just for a short period of time, it's not going to be a big issue. But, slow cooking for hours like they do on the stews and stuff with a lot of tomato paste and highly acidics. I don't know. I'm just not going to try to second guess the doctors. I know a lot of them say that, no. And I don't think commercial kitchens are permitted to use them anymore. So, Alzheimer's and things like that has been, they pointed out that some of that, may have been caused from it. So I don't know. But generally, plenty of cheap stainless out there and plenty of cheap. But, like I said, for boiling water, it's fine. I appreciate you, brother. Appreciate you. Yeah, I'd say probably, I hate to say that and be wrong, but I don't think it would be as bad as, boiling in it. So it's just redistilling in it. It's really not there very long, not near as acidic. So it's kind of iffy. But you can get the cheap stainless pots pretty cheap. It's what's going on, Chris. What's going on to the other Chris? It's all set. Well, I'm gonna take an early shot. It's Tuesday, but that's still right. Damn, that's the shit's gonna kill me. Oh, I didn't put that on the hydrometer. That's gonna do that. See what it was. I guarantee it's 140. I know. It's for shadow. Man, that's got my sweetness in it. He's getting better, man. That's pretty good. Tastes kind of like mine. Yeah, that's Wes's. Man, that's good. What's going on, DNA? Good to see you. How to sweeten up some stuff. All right. Now, are we talking prior to, while we mashing in, bringing up your gravity? If you check your gravity and it's not high enough, a lot of times people will sweeten it up a little bit to get their gravity up there. Or you're talking about sweetening it up during the run, or are we talking about sweetening it up after you get done? Because all three work real well, and so need to know exactly what we're talking about. So we're talking about sweetening up before we distill. A lot of times that's when people do the after post flavoring. One thing I will say is your hydrometer won't work once you start sweetening things up. So it's kind of like a math thing. So if you have 10 ounces of 160 and you want to add some sweetness to it, and you've got some maybe some flavored water or some syrups or something like that, that volume going into that 10 ounces will percentage wise cut it down. So for every, if you've got 10 ounces and you add an ounce, that's going to be 16 proof coming off of it, right? And it's going to vary, but you're adding about 16% or 16 or 10%, 1%, 10%, I'm sorry. So 10 is 10 ounces. And if you add an ounce, you're adding 1/10 of that volume, right? So you're that's 1/10 of the volume that you're adding back to it. So that's 10%. So if it was 160, you're taking out 16 proof. If it's 160 proof, you're taking out 16 proof for every ounce of that you add into it, right? So if you had a couple ounces, that's 32 coming off 160. So it's going to be 128. And, you just have to use that kind of math when you do it, because the hydrometer doesn't work anymore. Once you add that sugar in there, it just throws the viscosity totally off, and it gives you false readings, and it just doesn't work anymore. Now, the math, is the easiest way to do it. So you could do it, in ounces is probably the easiest way. Most of your jars, will have, will be graduated, and it'll tell you how much, milliliters and stuff. So this is like 800. So if it's 800 and you add 80, that's 10%, right? So 80 milliliters on that would be a 10%. So if it were 140, it'd be 14, right? 14, proof. So it just, doing it that way is a pretty easy way. I know bartenders, they have a like a spectrometer, little, what do they call it? I've never bought them or used them, but they have them on Amazon. And a lot of refractometer. Yeah, refractometer. They call it a little bartender. A lot of bartenders use it for that reason, because once they start mixing stuff in it, you can't just use a regular hydrometer anymore. You have to use a refractometer. And the real cheap ones probably aren't quite as accurate. I know some of the ones get up there in price, man. I know, like on the show, some of those that Mark and Digger pull out, those like $1,000. We just can't afford to do that. So we just use math and use those little $4 hydrometers, or $12. Yeah, here's one for 18, 16, 18. Here's one for $8.99. Now, I don't know. I'm just not sure how accurate that's going to be. So $8 or $9, but I get the hydrometers. I get 3 packs. Yeah, here's 3 pack for $8.45. So they're about $3 each, right? When you get them that way, and that's the way to go. And then, just like I say, just kind of graduate it and use your milliliters on your jar. So if you got whatever proof it is, you take it up to 800, right? And so whatever proof this is, if I add 80, that's going to be 10% of this 800. So 10% of, if it's 120 proof, it's going to be 12. If it's 180 proof, it's going to be 18. 140 proof, it's going to be 14. And that's what for every 80 milliliters that you add to that, that's how much it's going to bring it down. So it's pretty easy. It's kind of hard to theoretically think of it, but once you see it done, and once you do it a few times, it becomes pretty easy. But having that graduated jar really helps a lot, or a graduated cylinder that you normally test your stuff in, but it's kind of hard to do it in something like that. But yeah, it's just like adding water. Adding that syrup is any liquid that you add to it. It's just going to be like cutting it down with water, proofing it down with water. It's a liquid that's going in there. So instead of something that's neutral like water, proofing it down, it's just something that's real sweet, proofing it down. And boy, it will affect that hydrometer in a big way. So yeah, it's going to have about the same impact as 10 or 80 milliliters of water on that 800. We'll take it down to 10%, just like the juice. So if you're using a syrup or any juices like that, yeah, and it does 20%. For the 160, it takes it down pretty quick. It's just like proofing. So, but you just can't use your hydrometer anymore. That's the bad part about it. But good question. Yeah, and it does take it down pretty quickly. Sure does. But now another way, getting back to your question, for people that may be listening or watching that are curious about, how to sweeten it up when you're mashing. If you're doing an all grain and you just don't want to use that sugar and get that little bite and little off flavor to it, there's a lot of other things that you can use. Corn syrup, probably less offensive to most than sugars are going to be, but dextrose is probably one of the best things that you can use to help spice it up and sweeten it up a little bit without adding hardly any bite at all. Dextrose is basically a monosaccharide of glucose. And we talk about that's what yeast like. That's basically what you're getting from your grain, and it's derived from corn grain. It's basically very similar to a corn syrup, but it's dried. It's a dry powder, and it's really good. That's probably the most recommended. I would recommend first and foremost, and then maybe some panela sugars, raw sugars, and different things like that, or that like the Morena, Zolka Morena sugar. I use that a lot. That works out well. But for my all grain, if I just don't get a good conversion, something didn't work out right, dextrose is my go-to for sure. But if we get that good conversion, we don't have to worry about it. And my potatoes are done, but unfortunately, I opened up my. I ordered a column, and it's just before Christmas time. Is I had the Black Friday deal going on and stuff, so I got a pretty good deal on it. And when I received it, I opened up the box and looked at it. It was really packaged well. The box wasn't damaged, so I thought, yeah, everything's okay. That was very stupid of me. Very, very stupid of me. I should have opened up all those globes and make sure that they were intact. But the whole box, everything looked good, and I didn't. So when I'm putting it together, I go through it and look at it. Sure enough, one of my globes were broken. So hopefully we'll be able to get that replaced. I'm probably going to have to pay for it. I mean, that's been 5-6 months ago, and I haven't had the need for it, because I'm only going to use it when I want to make vodka and high proof. And so, yeah, apple cider definitely works great. But for also, during, also I mentioned dextrose to bring up the gravity, but that's for mashing. Now, when you're distilling, people ask a lot about sweet corn. Now, sweet corn is probably for me is just too expensive to use to mash in with, but it's not too expensive to infuse with and to mix with like some cream corn to put in your infuser. That really it really pulls a lot of corn flavor, and that's a trick. A lot of people like quit saying that, man. You're giving up her secret, but it really does. It really gives a good corn liquor flavor, and it sweetens it up, makes some really good corn liquor. Now, if you're doing a multi-grain, you might not want to do that because it'll push that corn way through, and you might not get a lot of those other notes. But for just a corn liquor, yeah. Yeah, I'm so stupid, Clint. I can't. I should have looked at that thing, but it was just packaged so well. And I've dealt with these people. Hopefully, they'll take care of me. If not, I mean, I'll buy one. I mean, it is really my mistake. It's been almost 6 months. I should have opened that box when I first got it. I'm a dumbass for not doing that. It was just so well packaged. I'm like, that'll be fine. What's going on, Saul? Good to see you, brother. So, live and learn. You'd think I know by now, but that was dumb thing. But hopefully I can, get them to send me one out, and if they give it to me at cost or something like that, that'd be nice. I don't want it to be free because, like I said, I should have checked her out when I got the box. But either way, we'll get her taken care of. And hopefully I can get it in soon. But these good people, I've dealt with them quite a bit in the past, and they're a member of the militia and stuff, and they're good people. So, but I got a really good deal on it. It was a Black Friday deal, and oh, I don't know, man. I don't know. Guns can get pretty costly if you continue to buy them. If you buy the expensive ones, I don't know. I got a lot of guns cost more than a steel. Golf, definitely. I don't know. Them golf clubs I got, well, they weren't too bad. I bought them used Tommy Armour's TI 100. I've had them for a long time, but they're nice. Graphite shaft, titanium face, big faced. They're pretty nice. I paid like $300 for them. They wasn't too bad. I've had them for 30 years. I've used them for a long time. About 25 years, I guess. 25, 30 years. Probably back close to 30, yeah. Yeah, they are. Well, hopefully that globe won't be too much. The whole column was a really good deal. I think I got it for like 229, 239, something like that. I think right now it's like 249. It's through Lines Brewing Solutions. They're real good people. I've done a lot of that, bought a lot from them in the past and stuff. So I just sent them messages earlier today. So we get her taken care of. I got to get another 6-inch tri clamp anyway. So I wouldn't have been able to do it anyway. I thought I had one, but one came with it. I still need another one. In a cherry mash, do you need to add anything special? Just nutrients. There's not going to be any much nutrients in your cherry. So pectic enzyme works well with cherries too because it is kind of a meaty fruit, a lot of fleshy fruit. So A little pectic enzyme, will help get all that juice out of it, which you need. But cherries, surprisingly, it depends on the variety of cherry. And so it depends on, what cherry it is to how much you need to use, and what cherry it is depending on the sweetness. So let's pull up one chart here and let's look at the sweetness factor. Now, cherries, yeah, I was going to say they're not quite as sweet as a lot of people would imagine. They're a little less than a blackberry, you know, less than oranges, watermelons, apricots, raspberries, a lot less. So it's about an 8.0. So, but that's probably taking tart cherries and sweet cherries and combining them and giving you an average there. I do know that the chart that shows you how much to use per gallon has a pretty large range because of the difference in the tartness and the sweetness of cherries. And there's such a large range. Let me find that chart too here. I think this is it. Here we go. So cherry, yeah, sour 3 to 4, uh, and sweet 6 to 7. So you would think you would need less sweet cherries than you would sour, and actually that's the opposite. So strange as it may be, but that's for making wines. But you basically making a wine before a brandy, so this is a pretty good chart to follow, and that's using a predominant amount of fruit, right, mostly fruit instead of a lot of water and no concentrates and no sugar. So once you start, adding sugar and concentrate, if you can get some concentrated cherry, I've made some cherry wine. I didn't do the cherry bounce shine because the cherry wine was just so damn good, right? It was so good I couldn't bring myself to distill it. So, and that was probably one of my first wines I made. I made a cherry, and then of course the grape. I did a dark grape wine, and then I did some blackberry, and then I did some white grape. Were my first, I think, 4 wines that I made. And since I've done plums and a lot of other stuff, but that cherry was just so rich and so good. I just couldn't bring myself, and I still have a few bottles of it. Tommy Armour, it's a golf club. It's I don't know, it's up there with Ping and some of those others. It's a lot of pros use them, or used to. I don't know about nowadays. I don't keep up with as much these days, but um, yeah, I inherited a few sets of clubs, over the years, and so I got 3 or 4 sets of clubs in there. I need to sell them. I don't hardly ever play, but yeah, I've got some Big Bertha, set of Big Bertha, irons and drivers, and got a lot of different ones. Pings, I got some pings. So I got some pretty good golf clubs. I just need to get my fat ass out there and use them every once in a while. I'm pretty good for somebody that never plays a lot. I can just walk out there and be fairly good at it. Except for driving, when I was younger, I was able to drive really well. But after my shoulder injury, it kind of, I don't know, I'm not as able, to drive quite as well as I used to. But with my irons and everything, I think it's just the way it's a different swing. So yeah, you can reduce it down and sweeten it up. Yep, yeah. I tell you, I love the cherry wine, man. It's so rich and good, man. It's so good. And I stopped it short of being, finished, right? So it's like a 1.1, 1.15, somewhere in there when I stopped it. Uh, which, a lot of people, for distillers, you never stop, just, you never stop the fermentation. You just run it when it's ready, right? But in winemaking, sometimes you want to stop it, and that way you can retain some of the sweetness. So that's basically what I did with this, and it was great. What's going on, Kirk? Good to see you, brother. What's up, Chad? Not much, brother. Just chilling. What are you up to, my friend? Yeah, it's been a while for me too, Clint. Not 40 years though. Damn, my clubs ain't that old. Damn, you showing your age now. that or you played putt? You talking about putt? That's good, brother. Yeah, I bought some tomatoes and peppers and plants today, a buck each. I think it's like a buck and a quarter each what I paid for them. But so I got to get them in the ground. Got a lot of work to do this week around the house. A lot of stuff I've been putting off. Got a lot of weeds and small trees to cut back. Uh, and I got a tree out front. I got to prune back too. So I got a lot of work to do this week. Yeah, I'm not too bad at putt putt. I played a lot of putt putt back in my day. Oh yeah, cherries are awesome. I love them as wine, man. I mean, I love cherry bounce too, but man, or brandy, cherry brandy. But man, that cherry wine is so damn good. I couldn't bring it to myself to run it because I made it to run. My whole intention was to make some cherry bounce, but after I tasted the wine, I'm like, nope, that's not. I stopped fermentation and said, now I use the potassium metabisulfate for those that are curious. So you can use potassium metabisulfate it's Camden tablets. So if you've ever read a lot of wine, uh, wine recipes, a lot of times you'll see them call for Camden tablets. A lot of times you can clean it when it first starts. You can kill a lot of stuff off. That way you don't have to use high temperature. I prefer to use the high temperature instead of using the Camden tablets early on. Uh, but it is a sulfite, so it does add maybe a little bit of sulfurish. But as long as if you're distilling, as long as you have that copper mesh or a copper setup, you're going to be fine. But it just kills the yeast off, right? And it kills everything off. So a lot of times they'll use it to kill wild yeast off and any bacterias and anything like that, and they'll use it to kind of sanitize a must before it becomes a wine, right? So when you first get started, but a lot of people also you can use potassium sorbate, and the potassium sorbate just basically neuters the yeast, so it doesn't kill them. It just makes it so they don't breed anymore. They can't breed anymore. So at the end of their life cycle, they just die, and they don't breed, and it doesn't stress them as much. And probably some people feel it leaves a better flavor, but you have to be on top of it and do it when it's if you want it to maintain some sweetness, you got to do it at like 1.1, 1.5 or 1.1, 1.2, not 020, but yeah, 1.020 or 1.015 in that range. That way, by the time it has an effect on the yeast, it still retains some sweetness and it's not going to go dry. So it's not going to be a dry wine. Yeah, it's beautiful here, man. It's 81 today. It was just beautiful outside. Yeah, driving is my issue now. If on a par three course, I'm a demon because if I can just use my irons the whole time, on these par three golf courses, I'm a demon on those. But if it's a long course, I'm gonna be slacking back. So a lot of my friends and stuff, they'll still bring me out on a scramble every once in a while because I'm good at putting and I'm good at short irons, and I'll just let them drive it. Sometimes I won't even bother, but we'll take a chance to see every once in a while I'll get a good one. But for those that haven't played it, you get like 3 or 4 people, and furthest drive you drop, and everybody takes a shot from there. And the best shot, you just keep taking the best shot, and it's a lot of fun. I don't know, Mikey, you going? I've heard quite a few going to be there. I know Phil's probably not. Damon and Tom are, so we're going to have some representation there. But I think there's going to be quite a few there. Are you going, Mikey? Yeah, it does get expensive. I'll car camp though, man. I don't give a shit. I'll drive up Friday, party Friday night, go out there and pass out in the car, wake up Saturday, party, and do it again. And if Anne's with me, I'll make her drive me home Saturday night. What's going on, Brian? Good to see you, brother. So when you going, Mike? Too old. Get you. Oh, you can sleep on the ground. Get you an air mattress. Oh, you should have a strong back if you made it with your hands, man. Those desk riders are the ones that have the weak backs. Saturday morning, are you coming back Saturday night or are you going to stay till Sunday? Yeah, I should be at the jam for sure. I definitely 100% bar the bottle 100%. Jam, a lot better chance of me being at the jam than popcorn unless Mikey's going to take me and we can split the gas. I don't think Ann's going to be up to it. She don't get back from Florida until Thursday, and I don't think she's going to be up to doing anything Friday or Saturday. She has to work Sunday, so she has to work Friday and Sunday. You going to stay? You got a room? You car camping? What are you doing? And who else you got going with you? Oh, got quiet on me now. I'll help pay for gas in the room. Yeah, you just need a air mattress in the back of the truck and a camper top, man. That's all you need. Yeah, you need to get you a little 4-cylinder truck, man. Little 2-wheel drive 4-cylinder truck that'll get you about 25 miles a gallon. Well, you want somebody to go in on the gas in the room? We got 2 beds. I'll sleep on the couch, man. I don't care. But I'll split the cost of everything with you, unless you got some high end, high fluting 5-star place. All right. Well, if you got a woman going, that's all right. I understand. Let me know though if she doesn't decide to go. He's a who's ya. Let me know, brother. I might even bring some of Wes's sweets. I mean, that's good stuff. Damn, that fly wants in there too. It's so damn sweet. Little fly running around on it. I tell me another little sip of that. Man, it's stout though. Damn, it's stout. It tastes a lot like my sweetness, man. I could swear it would be taste like one of my jars right there. Sure does. I got quite a few jars in there that taste just like it. Pretty damn good, Wes. All right, so let's see. Let's go back to the questions. Oh yeah, post sweetening, pre and during. So in making wine, after you use the potassium metabisulfate, if it still goes a little bit dry, they make something that you can add, and you don't have to use potassium sorbate or potassium metabisulfate if you want to use this stuff called xylitol. Now, a lot of people don't like it. It's they're unsure. It's kind of something new. It's an alcohol sugar, and it doesn't. Um, it's unfermentable sweetener, so your yeast won't kick back into production if you use it. Right, that's the problem with back sweetening. If you don't use the potassium metabisulfate or the potassium sorbate, is as soon as you start sweetening it up with some sugar or panela, whatever you want, Zilka, whatever you want to sweeten it up with, dextrose, whatever. Um, those are all fermentables, and the yeast just want to start kicking back in, and they'll just ferment it on out, and so you'll have a little fermentation, and you'll have a little flocculence in the bottom, and that's not going to be good in your bottles, right? But you can add something called xylitol, and it's a alcohol type sugar sweetener, and okay for diabetics. A lot of diabetics use it. It's used in a lot of stuff. People don't realize it, but it's used in a lot of stuff, and it's decent to back sweeten with. You won't have to worry about yeast kicking back in, but kind of a lot of questions about the safety of it and stuff. I don't know. It's kind of something fairly new, but it's pretty commonly used. Let's see what they're saying about it. It's using a lot of gums and naturally occurring sugar alcohol used as a low-calorie sugar substitute derived from fruits, vegetables, and birch trees. Interesting. I didn't know that. Looks and tastes like a table sugar, but contains about 40% fewer calories. It's popular in sugar-free foods and dental products because it does not promote tooth decay. Sweetness equal to sugar 1-to-1. You use it in your recipes and stuff. Calories about 9.6 per teaspoon, 40% less than sugar. Glycemic index of 7, making it diabetic friendly with a negligible impact on blood sugar. And baking, it's heat stable, allowing it to be used directly in baked goods. It's in a lot of your sugar-free gums, toothpaste, mouthwashes, anything like that to kind of sweeten it up. It cannot be fermented by oral bacteria either. So, you don't have to worry about your saliva and your yeast in your mouth fermenting it, I guess. It helps neutralize saliva pH and stops production of decay-causing acids in your mouth. Interesting. I didn't know that about its dental benefits. Highly toxic to dogs, so don't ever let your pets have any of it. Probably cats as well. So don't ever let your pets get into it. Large amounts can cause gastrointestinal side effects like bloating, gas, and diarrhea. I have heard some people say it gives them the runs when they may be using a lot of it, but I have heard that. Medical consideration. That's what I was wondering about. A major study suggested a potential correlation between high blood levels of xylitol and an elevated risk of cardiovascular events like strokes or heart attacks. Consult a doctor if you have concerns about cardiovascular health. That's kind of what I was hearing about, that it might have some issues, but I would say that's probably, they've used it for a long time. So that's probably if you use a lot of it. So it's probably not good to get like Kool-Aid and use as your sweetener to a whole bunch to sweeten it up and to use it that way. Uh, but it's been around for a little bit. It costs about $10 for a pound bag, so it's not cheap. But I got some because Ann's a diabetic, and we were going to try it out, and some of the recipes with cakes and stuff, and instead of using sugar, and also wanted to check it out with some of my wines. Let's see what they got. And it's spelled with an X instead of a Z. It sounds like I'm saying Z xylitol, but it's XYLITOL for those that want to kind of look it up. Yeah, not cheap. $30 for $6 a pound if you buy a pound bag. I think I bought a pound bag off Amazon. It was like $9. Organic. And it's pretty good. Well, if you want a sparkling, if most of your wines, like with your red wines, you don't want that to happen. So a lot of times you'll use the potassium metabisulfate and then kill off the yeast and then degas the shit out of it so it's flat. You don't want that fizzy, right? Like it's not a sparkling wine, but like a lot of the no, it's actually XYLITOL. It does sound like Z. But yeah, so in white wines, if you want a sparkling wine that has some fizz to it, or if you're making, actually when you're making champagne, once they finish doing everything, they'll put a little bit of yeast, just a pinch of yeast in that bottle, and then they'll store it upside down so all that yeast and flocculants go to the top right next to the cork. And then a lot of places will open it by removing all that and letting a little bit out and then pouring it or breaking the end of it off even. Interesting. Yeah. Hey, Amy, how are you? Hope you're having a good evening yourself. But yeah, the xylitol is it's an alcohol sugar, so it works really well as a back sweetener. If you don't want the fizz, if you want the fizz, use something fermentable. Yeah, like the strawberry champagne that I've got. That's what I did. I made it. It was dry, and I added some, instead of yeast to it, I added a little bit of sugar because I never used the potassium metabisulfate or sorbate on it. So I added just a touch of sugar to it and then corked it up. That's why a lot of times in your champagne bottles and a lot of these sparkling wines that do have the carbonation, they'll put cages on it. And that's to help hold that cork in because it can build some pressure. So if you don't have cages on your stuff and you're corking your bottles up and you're doing that, be real careful how much yeast you sprinkle in there or how much you back sweeten it if you don't use the potassium metabisulfate or sorbate, because it trust me, I've learned the hard way. It can blow the cap off and make a mess all over the other bottles and your aging room. So yeah, been there, done that. Tickle pink, yeah, man. I know, man. What's wrong with them? But I got my own version of it, and it's very dry, but it's got a great strawberry flavor. But it's pucker up dry. It's bone dry. But it's pretty good stuff. I need to make some more. Actually, I'm gonna have to maybe start growing some strawberries if they don't get them cheap anymore. I used to be able to get them pretty cheap, but and peaches. So hopefully we can start getting some of these cheap. That's why I tell y'all, all you young ones out there listening, start growing trees, start planting fruit trees, and start planting your berry bushes. You don't know how much I wish I'd planted a bunch of that on some of my property back home. Yeah, it doesn't make for a happy wife or a happy life, that's for sure. Yeah. Neither did my first time doing banana, and I like using the airlock and all that. And nobody told me. I didn't know, and I didn't read how much of a cap they produce. And you talk about a mess, man. I had and it just shot straight through, not blew the the airlock off and hit the ceiling. Literally, it was on the ceiling. I was cleaning ceiling and floor. It was not pretty. But Anne's trooper, man, she didn't get too crazy. Yeah, it was on the ceiling and all around the fermenter. It was everywhere, man. I respect the banana. You have to respect the banana. It made a huge cap. But I did check my potato mash, and it's done. It's ready. It's right at 1. It's not dry yet, so I was hoping to run it, man. But um, I hate running it without that column. That's one of the reasons I bought that bad boy. It's real nice. But yeah, a lot of people don't realize it. But Lines Distilling, I thought that was some Chinese company or something. And it's not. It's actually a small business here in the States. I think it's in Michigan. And it's a small business. I thought it was something big, huge, and it's not. It's just like another one of us, trying to work and, get ordering stuff from China and trying to make a living, selling it at a little bit of a profit like most of us do. Most all that stuff comes from China. So, and I'm trying Oak Steel's probably who originally made it, but he sells it cheaper than Oak Steel's has it for him. So I couldn't resist the deal on that. Yeah, I bought a lot of stuff off of them before I realized that Fieldbilly sold a lot of the same stuff. So I try to spread it around, but they're real good people. I've worked with them in the past, and they got a lot of stuff. They sell on eBay, is where they sell most of their stuff. Yeah, Oak Steels is fine if you don't want to wait forever. And I don't know about their customer service. I've never had to. It's 4-inch. I've never had to deal with customer service at Oak Steel, so I don't know. And most of the stuff I bought is either been off of Lines. Most of my pipes and stuff have all come from Lines and Fieldbilly. Um, yeah, they I'm trying to think of the name of the. What is their name? It's the same one. Let me see here. I think I bought some of their stuff. I think they sell on Amazon too. Let me see. No, what's the name? I'll be able to tell you in just a minute. Let me go to Denord. I didn't even got to it yet, and it finally came to me. Yeah, I get a lot of stuff, Denord stuff. They carry a lot of Denord too. Line stuff. And Phil. Yeah, I don't think any of it. I don't know of any, anybody that's any. Well, I know Wayne. Wayne will make stainless stuff, and he's got the machine shop. He can do some stuff, um, but he's the only person I know working with stainless and selling stainless stuff. Everybody else is either working with copper or importing, all the stainless stuff from China. Wayne's probably the only person I know. Yep. Yeah, this is here's the bubble plates that go with it. Well, it's got my gaskets on there, but yeah, so here's your typical 4-inch bubble plate. Then this sits in between the the glass globes. But yeah, nice stuff. I definitely should open that package up as soon as I got it. That was stupid of me. I just returned it in. No questions asked. But 6 months later, I mean, you can't blame a business for like, wait, you're going to have to pay for something here. Oh, so Clint's got to outdo me. That's what I'm hearing. He's got to go bigger. Gotta keep up. Now I'm gonna have to send that in and get me a 6. Nah, that 4 should be fine for most of what I do. Ripple. Oh, a lot of Ripple. I love to be some Ripple mints. Let's see here. Let me see what the hell Boone's Farm's got these days. All right, let's see what flavors they got. Strawberry Hill. We drank a shitload of that. Snow Creek Berry, Watermelon Fuzzy Navel. Over the years, several flavors have been discontinued, including Blackberry Ridge, Country, Quencher, Hard Lemonade, and Raspberry Hard Lemonade, which was also good. Sun Peak Peach, Tickle Pink, and Wild Raspberry. They need to bring the Tickle Pink back here at Boone's Farm. That was a favorite. The ladies loved it. And consequently, so did we. If they liked it, we liked it. Yeah, I drank quite a bit of Old Boone's Farm back in the day. Hell yeah. Yeah, it'll be nice once I get it set up. Dang on it, man. I can't believe I didn't check. I could have all that in and ready to go. I don't know. I might just use what I got. I got a decent little setup, but I can get high. I know I can get 187 easy. I got that last time easy. I know I could probably chill the water a little bit more and deflag a little harder and get it to that, but I'd rather use the column than compress the tails in it. Well, now I always don't want to over attenuate. I don't want to always use the column in those bubblers if I want. A lot of times I'll do double and triple distillation to get what I want instead of going through the column. And I like doing that. Yeah, well, and just decreasing the temperature going into the deflegmator creates more reflux, so that'll help up the proof. That's how I dial it in. I've got a little adjustment valve on that, and I can dial in just how much for proof, so I can dial in the proof. Generally coming off with nothing, it's about 130, 40, just coming straight into an elbow with a short pipe. I can get about 130. But, once I had some height and some copper mesh and a few things like that, create a little passive reflux, it gets to 140 pretty quickly. And then from there, I can dial it. I can go through the deflegmator and I can go from 140 to 187 just by adjusting how much flow, right, or temperature going into the deflegmator. Actually, I don't have any water at all going through it at first. Once I get through my heads, 4 shots in heads, well into my heads, then I'll start deflagging because I don't want to compress heads. I appreciate you. Steve's on the ball, man. 9 o'clock, boom. I'll have to wait till about 10 after Steve so I can, because I've tried that before and it's like, nope. So they look at 1 hour after the very last one that you shared. And I think it was probably around 8:10, 8:05, 8:08, something like that. Steam injection. You talking about a jacketed or injecting steam into the actual pot? I've seen where they're doing that, and that's got to lower the proof. But yeah, if you had like a coil inside that you ran steam to or jacketed, that would be awesome. I've often thought it'd be nice to have a big, copper or stainless coil inside your steel just to force steam through instead of just having a jacket, work the outside, have a jacket and the coil in the middle to speed it up. But I've seen some people introducing steam directly into the pot. I appreciate it, brother, because I am forgetful. But I've seen people injecting steam directly into the pot. Yeah, we were just looking at those 26-gallon pots they got on sale right now for $500. It's not a bad deal. Not bad at all. Yeah, that's what I was talking. Yeah, what I was talking about. Yeah, they've got. Is that the way a Bain Marie? I thought that was like a jacketed steel. Yeah, but directly injecting steam into the mash, unless you have a fractional column, I mean, you're going to get a lot. It's going to get a lower proof. I would think you're adding a lot of steam and water to it. What's going on, JJ? Good to see you, brother. North Georgia. Yeah, a little. Yeah, it's milk can. Yep. Let's see. Who was that we were looking at? Yeah, it's the milk can type. Pretty heavy duty. Who was it had that Clint we were looking at last week? We were looking at them Saturday. I can't. What an oak steel. Right, jacketed. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. But some are actually injecting steam directly into the mash itself, not, directly into the mash, not through a coil or anything like that. Clint, you remember who it was that had those milk cans, 26 gallons, $500 we were looking at last week? I can't remember. My mind, man. I should be able to remember shit like that, but yeah, paying for all that partying I did when I was younger, I guess. Yeah, Brewhouse. Yeah, I think that's what it was. But somebody here can remember something. I mean, Clint can't remember shit. Let's see here. The old brew house. I guess they call it testing equipment. I don't know. No. Sampling. Distilling. Kettle boilers. 15,299. I don't see the 20. 26 was $3.99. Maybe it came with other stuff other than just that, but they're out of stock right now. But normally, stainless steel kettle, the milk canned one, $3.99. But what we were looking at was 500, but that might have included worm and one other things as well. But they got a 53-gallon for $9.59. Out of stock. Out of stock. And they're pretty pricey on some of their caps, though. But that's not too bad for the 26 for $3.99. Once they get back in stock, you could probably have them message you when they get back in stock. Yeah. Yeah, the 26.4 is fine. The 53, I definitely go for the 6, though. But if you want to get your arm in there and clean, if it's like mine, you're going to have to get a 6-inch because you ain't getting it in a 4. That's a good one. Can't afford to stop drinking. It'd be a divorce, right? Yeah, let's see. It was was it $3.99? Damn it. I'm not on there anymore. Let me see. Shit. Brew hot. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, $3.99 for the brew house. That's 400, and so you could add 250. So about 650 for that kettle, 26-gallon, and that 4-inch column. Then you're going to get a reducers to reduce down to 2-inch, and then have the shotgun or worm. So it's going to be probably close to $800 once you get everything. Yep, think you're about right on it, brother. I'd go with the 4 though. I'd get the 4-inch. Yeah, it's not bad at all. Man, I thought all the doctors had babes for the wives, man. He must not be a good doctor, man. Most of the doctors, man. I know some. I went to school with some gals, and they were all pretty good looking, and they went into nursing, and their whole reason for going into nursing was to try to seduce a doctor and marry him. That was their plan. They were like 18, 19. That was their whole life plan. I'm going to be a nurse and I'm going to marry a doctor. That's funny. They wouldn't have anything to do with us. That was not where I was going. How tall is it for the column? This is what I got right here. There's what I got. But I had that top, that last one was broken. And it was the last one that I reached for in the box, too. So all the other ones I had out and stacked up, and I reached in there and the bag went, and it was loose in the bag. And I'm like, no. And I started looking at everything, and this does use 4. And I'm like, man. Yeah. Yeah, wouldn't have a need for it anymore. Yeah, this has 4 plates. And it's about, I guess it's probably about that long. So it's about 2 foot. Been assembled. Yeah. I think Phil has them for about the same price. Let me see what Phil's got. Yeah, a lot of stuff. This lines sells cheaper than oak seals, even without the weight. Let's see where he would have that. I know he's got them, and I'm pretty sure he gets them from Oak Steels. I don't know how much his markup is. Right there's one. That's a 3-inch though. That's sitting on a keg. Bubble plate steel with deflagrator and reverse flow tube chiller. That's a great deal for $4.99, man. Phil's got some good deals. And a lot of people don't realize when they compare his prices. I think pretty much most of his prices include shipping. So don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure they include shipping. Definitely ask. I don't see the column. I know he's got them though. I think they're like 250, 260. A little bit more maybe. Because this lines, they get their, guess they're getting some volume from China. And Oak Steels is China. Yeah, I don't see it. Where in the hell? Let's see if that's an option on this other one. That's a heck of a deal on that one, though. So instead of using those oxygen tanks, get some of those little pony kegs, man. Those work perfectly. And they're cheap as hell, too. Probably cheaper than the oxygen tank, to be honest. You probably sell that oxygen tank and buy a pony keg. One of the little tall ones or a corny keg, even, and convert it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it is. Definitely is, Chuck. It definitely is, Clint, for sure. And some of them are pretty good shiners. I mean, but yeah, they're not going to bring some grumpy old asshole on there like me, you know. They're not going to bring somebody on there that's, negative and shit and, an ass or something like that. So, they got, got to be somebody enjoyable to watch, with a good disposition. So, they're not going to bring some, you know, grumpy asshole on there. There's too many people out there that can distill that have, and really it's not about the actual product. It's about um, the lifestyle, kind of, living the lifestyle and entertainment and a little bit of information at the same time. But you definitely can't take everything for fact that you hear on there, and see on there. And there's a lot of, I get a kick out of some of the things that they do. Oh yeah, let me share the last links. All right, let's see. It was here. All right. Shouldn't take me a second. There's only a few. Dang on, I should have shared the Morgan's first earlier. Move him up the list. And see, it was just a few more. If I don't know, just let me do that from the very get go. Come on, Facebook. Well, the thing about the submarine pots is that when they boil and they come up, the way the sides are rounded like that, it forms a current that kind of turns and but it's something that you have to stir up until the point where it does start to roll, like a rolling boil. So yeah, submarine pots back in the day, they did distill on the grain with them, and you would have to stir the shit out of them with the big paddles, right? But it naturally forms a little circular motion inside that sub pot. To That's why they, and it's also real easy for them to build that with a sheet without having to do any kind of welding or anything. They just weld that one seam up, solder at one seam, and then the rest of it was, attached to wood, just nailed to wood. Yeah, he didn't mean to say they can't scorch. They can scorch, but you little less prone because of the motion of the boiling, where it goes up the sides and turns and it has a rotation on both sides, and it tends to pick things up off the bottom and keep it from settling. A lot of people fill the bottom with marbles, and that'll help keep things from settling down to the bottom. And when it starts boiling, marbles move around and help keep things dusted up off the bottom. I mean, there's a lot of different tricks to it, but yeah, you can still scorch in a sub spot, in a sub pot. But agitators, having an agitator, like a drill, like the mud mixer, and having, that's probably going to be the next big thing that people are going to start offering is through a 2-inch ferrule, being able to pass that octagonal mud mixer, right, that we attach to our drills into that, tighten it down, and put the drill on the top, and just slowly, you know, agitate as we go, kind of like a bigger setup. So having that 2-inch tri-clamp fitting that'll allow it to fit through there without allowing the steam through, probably be one of the next big things that they come out with. Um, Actually, you have to stir it, right? So early on, Elvin, when it's just coming up to temp, you have to be there to stir the shit out of it. So you have to keep it agitated and moving. Um, my thoughts were, and I've talked to Wayne about this, is, and I know Wayne's got a air agitator that blows air through it. It air agitates until you get to the point where you're rolling boil, and then you turn it off right before you start producing, and you can turn it off and then just go on from there. Great idea. But I've talked to him to make a submarine pot with like 2 stainless paddle wheels in there, and use like a magnetic drive on the outside to turn them. That way you don't have to worry about, something penetrating the steel itself in a hole or a tri clamp, something like that. There, you could just drive it magnetically from the outside. Something mounted to the outside with a magnetic drive to turn that wheel inside. That'd be pretty cool too. I knew what she's trying to say, bro. Yeah, you definitely can. But yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Using an agitator, in our own steels, like a regular, like the 26 we were looking at earlier, or 40-gallon, or even if you had a 55-gallon drums, set up, having that big long mud mixer, maybe adding an extension to it to get that far down. Mine's like that long. So that's not going to get to the bottom of a 55. So you might have to weld an extension on, or they do make extensions that, um, you know, uh, screw onto and clamp onto it, but probably just go ahead and weld it just so it never comes off. But yeah, going through it, maybe a 2-inch ferrule and having like an end cap with just that going through it and having a bearing there that doesn't allow the pressure or the steam or anything to come out might be, something to look at. Wayne. I'm sure he can figure it out. But I like the idea of having like the little paddle wheels inside the sub pot. You'd have to build them into the pot itself, or have a pretty good size opening where you could just set them in there, position it, and get the magnetics, to stick. Because you use some of these, and it'd probably spin outside the. You'd have to have it just like maybe 1/4 inch from your steel mounted, and just going around and driving it that way would be pretty cool. Right, right. Well, but I mean, mine wouldn't. It'd probably be like 1.5 feet from the bottom. I'd want to get a little bit closer to dust the bottom off real good. But you're right, and two, it would depend on the 55-gallon drum. Some of the drums are called sanitary drums, and they have a rounded bottom there at the corners where the bottom of the can, and then some just come straight down and make a perfect little does this, with a little area here that's harder to clean. But some of them are rounded inside, and those are considered sanitary. And if you're buying a drum, a 55, when they say sanitary, that's what it means. At the bottom there, it has that little rounded corner at the bottom instead of just flat straight, and it's a lot easier to clean. Yeah, that's what Wayne has. I think it's just air driven. Is just air driven. And people, it's going to blow. No, it just bubbles up through and out the steel and out your worm. It's just air coming out. And until you get ready to produce it, it has no ill effect. But when you start getting ready to produce, you cut it off and then, let the steam come up naturally and use that for, your velocity. But yeah, it works real well. He's got those if anybody's interested. Wayne's does some interesting things, man. He's pretty good. Pretty good. Call it Ozark Skunk Works. You got a lot of secretive things going on there. Shit, Jerry and Tickle couldn't even keep up with me, man. If I use my creativity, yeah, I remember them doing that. Remember when they had the curtain of jars? They had jar rigs all the way around the tent top, and they had like 40 jar rigs all the way around, and it created so much back pressure it about blew the steel. Yeah, it was funny as shit. But yeah, I think that Magna Drive would be pretty cool. They're just making it better, baby. Just making it better, my man. And keep from having to stir that shit manually, bro. You want to stir that shit manually? When you get my age, it's like, fuck that shit. Give me the Magna Drive, baby. I can sit back on Facebook, kick back, relax while it's stirring itself. I just looked down there and pried it. My little invention. They'll probably put that on the show. You wait and see if that ain't on the show in a month or 6. they put my damn bypass on there, Jerry. Like, yeah, I came up with it. Bullshit. Hell, we done had them for years now. But I don't care. I didn't, and I put these ideas out there. If anybody wants to use them, more than welcome. I'm not trying to patent anything or start a business or any of that shit. Too old, not interested. But if somebody wants to patent it, then we're going to have some issues because, we can just hashtag Hydro Drive right now. Can't be over. Yeah. Or Magna Drive. Yeah. Yeah. Just a little paddle wheel in there to keep it all stirred up. Yeah. I just think it'd be cool. Yeah. Condenser temperature, it has a big impact on how the oils on the oils of it and how hot. So if your condenser water is on the hot side, your liquor is going to tend to be hotter, and if it gets too cold, your oils tend to separate more, and you can get some kind of like if you get too cold, like freeze distillation, not or cold filtering. That's what I'm trying to cold filtering. A lot of whiskey makers will cold filter, and that's just coming through at a real cold temperature, and that's a lot of people think that takes a lot of the character away from it. A lot of people don't like cold filtered liquor, and if it comes through too hot, it can definitely have an impact in how it's hot and the heat of it. And it's basically the hotter something is, the more the atoms are moving and further apart they are. And when things get cold, it tends to compress and your fats and your oils tend to condense as well. And it does affect the flavor, but you'd have to have a pretty good palate. Not for so much the colder to the right temperature. So the best temperature is like 65 to 75 degrees, 60 to 75 in that range. Your distillate coming out, not your condenser temperature, but the distillate coming out. So you want it to be between 60, 75 in that range. And that way you'll have a pretty good, it won't be as hot as if your condenser temperature gets, above 75, not the end of the world, but if it gets, 80, 90, the hotter it gets like that, 100 plus, your liquor's hotter. And as the condenser temperature gets colder, a lot of people put ice in there and pack ice in it a lot. And a lot of times you'll see some saponification and floaties from some of your fats starting to coagulate together, kind of like when you cook a hamburger. And you want those oils to stay in suspension. You don't want them to condense. Kind of like cooking a hamburger. It's when it's warm, it's clear, but as it cools off, it starts to coagulate, stick together, and turn translucent and what's the kind of can't see through it's translucent. So um or opaque. So it's when your temperatures start getting low like that, your oils start to bond together. The molecules start bonding together, and you can get floaties as a result. I'm trying to think of the name of it, and I can't. Let me check this. I have to Google it. I can't remember anything. Let's see. Lipids and waxes and long chain fatty acids. So that's what you're getting. And those long chain, you want those to be a little thinner because when you start esterification process, when you start getting some of the esters from your low heads we talk about mixing with some of the acids and some of the oils, if those oils are bonded together, you don't get that good esterification and aging process as if they weren't bonded together, because that cold temperature coming out kind of bonds them, and cold filtering will help remove a lot of that. Saponification is a lot of times as a result of alkaline water. A lot of times, if you proof with alkaline water and you have some compressed tails in there, from using the column, or a deflagmator, it helps compress the tails, which isn't a bad thing. It helps, to have those in the solution, but and for esterification. But if you try to proof with really high pH water like 8, that's a high alkaline water, then you'll get saponification because you mix that alkaline with the fats, and it almost turns to basically like a soap. So some people, tried them and they soapy. It kind of tastes soapy, and that's what happens if you try to proof with high alkaline water. Then it'll give you a soapy flavor because it mixes with those oils and saponifies. But during the condensing process, if you do it at just the right temperature, those molecules don't bond together, and it's not where it's hot. They further apart, but it gets to where the liquor's hot. But that's just kind of the zone to keep it the molecules further apart so they don't bond, and kind of do the freeze distillation thing. And um, I'm trying to. There's a technical word for it, and I can't remember, and it's not given. Um, but it's kind of like a flocculation, but it's not. It's not like yeast flocculence. It's a flocculence of fat and fatty acids, I guess you could say. But there's another term for it, and I can't think of what that is. I can't think what that term is. There's a scientific term for it. Excellent question. Definitely. Thanks, Julian. Very good question. A lot of people, it just whatever. But really, if you can get that distillate, and a lot of people measure their condenser temperature, and that's really, you want to measure your distillate temperature and adjust the temperature of your condensing water to get your distillate to that temperature as it comes off. So a lot of people try to measure the temperature of the water and the coolant, but really you want to measure the temperature of your distillate, like you were saying, and adjust your water accordingly. Cleaning a stainless steel pot with a 6 tray with copper bubble plates can just cover the heating element. Wait a minute. Are you talking about an electric heating element inside, or so you're going to use the heating element to heat it up? Yeah, with just the stainless, a good scrub down with Dawn and a good cleaning or Sanistar or what is it, Sanistar, Star Sand, Star Sand. Um, those be pretty good way to do it. First run, yeah. Now the first run, what I did with mine is you definitely want to boil it, and just boil some water and run it through because you'll find that I basically did the Dawn and cleaned it up as best I could, and then after I finished with Dawn, I took a white rag, and this is stainless, and I just rubbed the hell out of the pot all the way around with that white rag and looked at it, and there was gray. So I'm assuming that's a buffing compound or some of the remnants of some of the lube. Now, when they make these pots, they start with a flat sheet of stainless steel, and there's a hydraulic press that comes down, and it's round shaped, and it just presses that into a mold, and it shapes into like a pot, but it's square kind of angles coming up, and then they just trim the top off as the next step, and then they round that, curl it under, and then next thing you know, they're riveting sides and making a top for it. So I've seen that on How It's Made. I love that show, How It's Made. I don't know if they still have that on there or not. I don't get that channel anymore, but I used to love watching How It's Made. I really loved that. But they were showing them making pots, and but that hydraulic ram that comes down, it's coated in greases and stuff. So, and they get it and they clean it and then they buff the shit out of it with polishing compounds and rubbing compounds to shine it up and take out all the scratches and stuff. So, um, yeah, you definitely want to use some Dawn to help cut a lot of that grease off. But boiling, and I do sacrificial run because you to solvent things you need three things. You can run acid, something acidic. So if you got some back set, that'd be perfectly fine. Just run some back set through it, and that'll clean up anything that requires an acid as a solvent. Then you can, run, your alcohol through it because the alcohol will, be a solvent for certain things that the acidity doesn't affect. And then you can run your boil water and run your hot water through to clean everything that you previously ran through it to clean up and get things that are water soluble. So you got alcohol soluble, acid soluble, and water soluble. So, kind of run it in that order. And I guess if your back set has some alcohol in it and you got some old tails that you want to run through it as a cleaner, you could keep those, just mark it and keep continuously using those to clean with, and that'd be perfectly fine. Just don't ever drink it, right? But yeah, that would work out well. But yeah, there's some polishing and rubbing compounds that you want to get out of there, and heating it up. And two, heating it up and running it like that, checks for any leaks, any gasket issues, or any problems like that. So it's a good idea to do anyway. Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. Finding good water is a problem, and you definitely want water that doesn't have a lot of sodium. A lot of it gets salt cured, and a lot of it has iron in it, which is a big, huge no no. Full of sulfur. Yeah, and it's tough to even, the sulfur, you know, you can take care of, but a lot of the other contaminants that are going to be associated along with that, yeah, it's not good. I mean, it's fine for flushing the commodes, and I don't even know if I'd want to bathe in it though, man. I know what you're dealing with though. Yeah, that copper mesh will take care of your sulfur problem, but um, yeah, you definitely need a better water source. Yeah, and just mark your tails. Just put it in a bucket. Put the big, do not drink on there, and just use it for that purpose. It's perfect for that because it's got the acidity and it's got the alcohol and some of the water as well. So I'd run that through, and then I'd run some water behind it, and when you run those tails through, just run it right into the same damn bucket. Pour it in there, run it back into the same bucket, and you don't have to run it all the way out. And then get it good enough to where you clean it, and then just dump the rest back into the bucket, and then fill it full of water and run you some water through there, and you should be fine. Hello, Miss Tammy. I see somebody's got a birthday coming up. Hope you're doing well. Little birdie told me somebody has a birthday coming up soon. How's it doing, Powder? Just getting started. I have 2 questions. Awesome. First, I'm brand new to this, and how do you know when the heads and force shots are done and good distillates are safe to keep? And is there a gauge? No, the gauge is your nose. I wish there was a mechanical gauge that could do that. It would be worth a fortune. There are certain ways to distill fractionally, though, that they can do that and separate it. But for us pot stillers, it's a pretty expensive setup and apparatus. But for us, just 50 milliliters is a good guide. It's not exact, but for a beginner, it'll give you an idea. It'll get you in the ballpark. So 50 milliliters per gallon, um, you're pulling off. And then after that, you just want to smell and taste and see if it still got that acetone and headsy taste. And you can run off a little bit more. We know that sugar shine probably has the least. Grains probably be in the middle, and then your brandies will probably be at the higher end where you get a little bit more heads from it. Um, a lot of it comes from the actual meat of the fruits and stuff, from the cellular walls of the fruits that are actually, some of them are breaking down, and most of them will break down and make ethanol, but some of them will make or ethanol, but some of them will produce some methanol, kind of like a wood alcohol, right? So, anytime you got some cellulose being distilled, most of it will be ethanol, but you will get some ethanol production. So the first bit that comes off, it's methanol. You will have a little bit throughout the whole run, but that's not a major concern. They've made it kind of scare people from distilling by putting all these things out there like the reefer madness from back in the day, and you smoke a joint and you're going to kill people with chainsaws and all that stupid shit. And they kind of did the same thing with this. So it is serious though. Methanol is in the right proportions and enough parts per million can definitely create issues and kill you and cause blindness, deafness, and all these things. So it's not a joke. But to get to that point, you'd almost intentionally have to try to concentrate them, right? So if you take off the first 50 milliliters and just pitch it, don't try to redistill it, don't try to run it again and all that, you'll be fine. You'll be perfectly fine. So if you got 10-gallon run, 10-gallon mash, you've got 10 gallons in there, 500 milliliters, right? So yeah, so 50 milliliters per gallon. And after that, start smelling it, and you can start collecting it. So when you know that you're getting close to your heads and your hearts, and you can start putting it in smaller jars instead of the big quart jars. Put it in pint or half pint jars, and use a lot of them. And you can do this in practice until you get better, right? And it's all about experience too. Experience is the best. It's better than the equipment. And using your nose and feel and put it in your hands and kind of rub them, or rub between your fingers and kind of get it volatile so it'll start evaporating quickly so you can get a good whiff of it. Helps But use those smaller jars when you get right in that critical point where you think it's going to start, going from one to the next, and just keep using those little jars until, oh, this is for sure hearts. This is good. This is sweet. This is we're definitely past that. I'm not getting the acetone. So then you can go back to your bigger jars, and then once you get to where your tails will start, you'll get that musty smell, and you'll see some of your distillates when it drips onto the surface, it'll bead because it's got some oils and stuff, more oils in it. You start getting into the fuse oils, and you'll smell it, and you'll smell it on your fingers. But you got to keep your fingers clean. So every time you do this, use kind of neutral soap. I use like an oatmeal soap, nothing perfume, because that kind of blocks with me, I don't have the best nose. So get some kind of neutral soap, clean your hands after you do it each time. But if you use those little jars then at the tails too, then once you get to the tails, you're in tails for sure, then you can just run that into a big stainless steel pot or something like that. And that's probably the best thing to run it into, a big old stock pot, and just start saving those up. And if you can save them in stainless or a keg or something like that, it's probably optimal. Buckets, it's probably not the best. Microplastics have become a big concern these days. I know a lot of people don't care and don't really think about it. It's something new, but it is a problem. But and when you start sampling it, go to your hearts, right? And start from your hearts and work to your tails, and then just sample each little bit. You can do a little sippy sip, a little spoonful. You've already turned your still off, so you're not going to be getting drunk and running your still anymore. So it's all shut off. You opened them up so you don't, implode. And just take your little teaspoon and just go from one all the way back to your tails to where it's like, whoa, that's just not good. And then, dump that in your tails bucket. And then then go to your hearts again, and then work your way towards the heads and keeping the hearts. The reason being, once you get those heads in your mouth and that acetone in your mouth, it's really hard to cleanse that off your palate in short order, right? Time will, but it's hard to drink something else and just get it off there, right? So if you go from hearts forward to your heads there at the end, then you'll know when you get to it. You'll know, oh, that's getting a little bit headsy, but you can keep that small jar and then go to the next one. And it's like, oh no, that's definitely not. So that little last jar that's kind of getting a little bit headsy, if you're wanting to age your liquor, you want to keep that, and you want to keep that little jar too that's kind of tailsy, but not too bad. So let me show you this chart, and I haven't taken the temperatures off, so disregard the temperatures because that's not on a pot still. It doesn't work like that. But here, so judging from this, right, you've got little jars, 14, 15, 16's little jars, 5, 6, 7, 8's little jars, and the rest of the hearts are in bigger jars. And so you can taste your tails going from 11 or 12 towards 14, 15, and then you might want to keep that 15, if you're going to age, and maybe even 16 if it doesn't taste bad. But then by the time you get 17 or 18, no, it's not good. But look at all that good alcohol in there. There's a high concentration of alcohol in there that's very easily separated from those tails, and you'll get good flavor. Now, you want to go back and you want to start out maybe at jar 10 and taste that. Oh, yeah, that's good hearts. 9, yeah, that's good. Good. I can hardly taste it. 8, no. There might be something there. It tastes a little different than jar 10 did. And, it's got a little bit of chemically. And then jar 7, yeah, I'm starting to taste some heads. By jar 6, it's like, no. By jar 5, it's hell no, right? So maybe, 7.5, 6.5 to 7, if you're going to barrel age, that's where a lot of your esters are, is in that blue. You don't want to get too many esters, or it's just going to be, it's going to be overpowered, and it won't actually esterify. You'll have too much in there and always taste like acetone. But if you get, between 6.5, 7 and 15 and 16, and if you were to, put 16 through 6, maybe 6.5 into a barrel, it will esterify, or in jars even, it'll esterify over time. It'll make some good, interesting flavors. Whereas your hearts alone will have a more neutral flavor, a good neutral sweetness. but a lot of your florals and a lot of your nuttiness and a lot of that will come from esterification of some of your heads and some of those tails. Now, disregard those temperatures because that's hogwash. Yeah, we should work that way. That's fractional if you could do that. So hopefully that answered the first question. And let's get to your second question. How do you know when your mash is ready to distill? Well, we use a hydrometer. And when you're using a proofing hydrometer, let me get a picture of one here for you so you can see what's going on with the hydrometer. Because a picture's worth 1,000 words, and it's a lot easier for me to explain using these visual guides. And I know I got one somewhere. Here we go. All right, this is a triple scale hydrometer. So when we start out our mash, we can basically create our own recipes by knowing how much sugar to add to, or how much conversion we're getting from grains, or how much sugar to add to fruit, or if we've reduced the fruit, how much sugar is in the actual must, or if we're making a sugar shine or a tequila with the syrup or anything, rums with the molasses. We use this to measure how much sugars are in the mash. So, and it's called a triple scale hydrometer. When you drop this in, and at the very top, right here at the very top where you see that little top red band, right underneath that where the yellow and red touch should say 1.000, and into the red is like 0.999. Now, there'll be different colors depending on the hydrometers that you have. Some of them, will have different colors, but it has a number scale. So 1.000 means that there's no sugars in there. When it goes above that, it means it's actually becoming dry. So like a dry gin or a dry wine, once you get negative into the negatives, that becomes very dry. Anything below that means you still have some sugars in there. Sometimes it means that you have some unfermentable sugars that no matter how long you let that mash sit there, it's not going to ferment those out, right? Because the yeast can't eat them. So when you drop this in, and like if you're doing an all grain conversion and you drop it in and you got 1060, 1070, somewhere in that range, it's an okay beer, and you did a decent conversion. You got a good conversion out of it, and you're ready to run. You can or you're ready to ferment. You can ferment that without having to add any kind of sweeteners or or any issues like that. You can just let that ferment out. But like if you're making a brandy or something and you're using something where you didn't get a good conversion, and you're using a strawberry, for example, that have very little sugars in it, you're going to have to add some sugar. So it pops up 1030 or 1040. It's not going to be very productive, and it's not going to taste very good either as a wine, especially. So we need to add some sugars to it, right? So we can add some dextrose, solid, whatever fermentable sugars that you want to add, depending on what your distillate is. I mean, if you're making a rum, you're going to use some brown sugar, some molasses, or some cane sugar. If you're using the all grain and you just didn't get a good conversion, you can use some, dextrose and help bring it up without getting that sugar fire to it, and that hotness that sugar tends to bring. Or if you're making a rum, you need to add a little more brown sugar or a little more molasses to get your gravity up. And if you're making tequila, you need to add a little bit more blue agave to get your gravity up. So once you get to 1060 to 1080, 90, depending on what you got going on, that's a pretty decent range depending on what you got and what your goals are, whether it's a wine or a brandy or a grain alcohol. And then as the yeast consumes these sugars, this hydrometer will float lower into it because it's getting closer and closer to water, right? And as alcohol increases as well, creates it to float lower, because things will float lower in alcohol than they will in water, pure alcohol than they will water. These are pretty much, you can, if you ever think that it's off, you can just set it in some water, and water should read perfectly at 1.000. That's how they're calibrated. So as your mash works off, it will sink lower and lower and lower into the mash. Now you need to separate the solids when you're testing it. So you get your little graduated cylinder, or you could use a taller jar, it doesn't matter, and get the liquids only in there and put your hydrometer in there and get your initial reading, starting gravity. So right when you get done and you're getting ready to pitch your yeast, you can find your starting gravity and you can write that down. So, and you can also look on the other side of this and it'll give you a potential alcohol by volume. So it'll give you, is this a 10, 12, 15%, and it'll give you an idea of how much, you can expect to produce once you get it done. It'll give you an estimate, basically. It's not measuring the alcohol content because there's none in there yet, but it's giving you a potential alcohol content based on your gravity. Now, sometimes you may not have all fermentable sugars in there, so it may not go to 1 or it may not go above 1. So it may end up at 1.1 or 1.2, in which case you may have some unfermentable sugars. So if you didn't get a good conversion, and you've got, called limit dextrins. You've got dextrins in there, which are basically trisaccharides or oligosaccharides, which are basically molecules of 3 to 12 or more. If it's more than 12, it's considered a polysaccharide, but yeast can't eat those. Anything more than 3, they can't consume. And sometimes they have trouble with trisaccharides as well. So you really want to get it down to a disaccharide or a monosaccharide. Now, when I talk about these molecules, let me give you a picture of what it looks like broken down here, so it's a little easier to visualize. Dang on it, I know that picture's in here. Here we go. So this is amylopectin and amylose, two of the things that we deal with when we're converting and when we're fermenting. Now, both of these are in all your fruits and grains, and it'll be in there, and in your sugars, it'll be in there in different varying percentages. So some will have more amylopectin and less amylose. Some will have more amylose and less amylopectin, but most everything will have both, right? So when we use our amylase or natural amylase or our exogenic amylase that we use, like a high temp alpha or a glucoamylase, we're basically using these to cleave. So your alpha amylase basically is an endoenzyme, and it will cleave from the outside in, and it cleaves. It doesn't debranch, but it cleaves, and it just makes random cleaves, and it'll break this thing up into smaller bits and pieces, but not all those bits and pieces will be fermentable. Each of these is a little glucose. Each one of these little blue balls on here is actually a glucose, and actually that's a benzene ring looking, that's shape. It's not a circle, but like a kind of like a stop sign, but not quite. It doesn't have 8 sides. But anyway, as these get broken down, the yeast can consume them, right? So we use that alpha endoenzyme to break them, to cleave them at different points, and it'll cleave from the outside in. Then we use either a beta amylase or a glucoamylase to debranch what that is already broken up into smaller disaccharides and monosaccharides, hopefully. Now, the glucoamylase is going to be more effective than the beta amylase, but both of them do a pretty good job. But the gluco will definitely convert more to monosaccharides than just the beta. A lot of the beta amylase is you're going to find in your grains that you malt. So your malted grains that you use for natural conversion will contain those beta enzymes. You can also buy them. They're not as common as gluco, and I wouldn't recommend them if you wanted to buy them that way. You'll get your beta with your malts, right? And you can use the gluco to help debranch all these into creating singles or 2 monosaccharides or disaccharides. And so you've broken the bonds into all those, glycosidic bonds on all those, and now you've created a fermentable sugar. And then once you get all that done, and all these little glucose molecules have been consumed, your hydrometer will float at 0. But if some of them are 3 or 4 long and still not consumable by the yeast, you may still get a little bit of sugar reading on your hydrometer because it can't determine whether they're fermentable or not. So a lot of times when people think they've got a stuck fermentation, it's not stuck. It's just you got limit dextrins in there that your yeast can't eat. Yes, yes, you can, but proof them down. And you can also use it for cleaner. Just take that rag and clean the shit out of it, which is what I did, and it helps a lot too. It'll help clean a lot of those buffing compounds and stuff off there. But definitely, if you do want to run them, and you can absolutely make sure that you proof them down, below 80 proof, 60 preferably. Certainly, yeah, you sure can, and that's why we use these high temp amylase and glucoamylase now, so we don't have the malt. Now, malting will give it a different flavor than an unmalted grain. So a malted grain versus an unmalted grain, especially like in your barley and your rye, and in your wheat, it will give you a different flavor profile based on whether it's malted or not. So malt tends to add a more of a smoothness, but you just have to experiment, So yeah, but you absolutely can. So we don't have to, go with the malts anymore, but it does add a little bit of flavor that a lot of people prefer, especially in the barley and the wheat. I've done wheat with and without malting, and I prefer it with the malting, um, and barley the same. But taste is an opinion. It's not a fact. So try it both ways and see what you think about it. But the big thing that we can do now, Greg, is with the exogenous enzymes, with the high temp alpha and the glucoamylase, is we can use these unmalted grains, but we don't have to 100% depend on those for the conversions. We can still add them, and I'll put the chart up and here that shows you what temperatures and everything to add those. And it'd be a good idea to copy that, but I'm going to take this chat off here and your question off here. So this is the temperature range. Top is centigrade, bottom is Fahrenheit, of when you want to introduce these adjunct grains into your mash. So we can still go ahead and use the malted barley, but we're not dependent on it as much. So, but we're still going to introduce it at the right temperature. That way, we get some benefit from that malted for the flavor, and benefit from its endogenic enzymes that are naturally, in that, because it does help break down the glutens. Like if you're using a lot of wheat and a lot of barley and a high percentage, it'll have certain amylases in there that help break itself down better than if it were an unmalted, right? So that's when you use what Cliff tells everybody about the Seb flow and the visco Seb. If you don't have it malted, then I recommend, if you're going to use fairly large percentages, to use the visco Seb or the Seb flow, and that'll help break those down, right? So the glutens and some of the gooiness that are in some of these different grains. So, but either way, we can now do it without having to depend on just those malts for the conversion like we used to have to. And then the powdered alpha that was horrible and that didn't work real well, that it worked, but not real well. I mean, I got okay conversions, but I mean, if you use the high temp alpha versus the powdered alpha, I mean, you're going to look at 1.55, 1.60, maybe a 1.65, whereas with the alpha, with the exact same poundage of grain, I used to have to run 3 pounds to get high enough, and now I can run 2.25, 2.5, and 2.25 pretty much, and get the same as what the 3 used to get me by using the high temp amylase, because it's that much more efficient than that powder. The powder was very temperature sensitive, and it just wasn't as good. But yeah, we can just use the high temp, and when you do use malted, you can still use a little high temp, right, to help start breaking things down and making it more manageable, and start cleaving some of those bonds, and then introduce these other grains at the proper temperatures as shown on the chart here, and hold them, get that rest period, that serification rest range, so you can get your enzymes to start functioning, and working and debranching. And then once you hold them for, 30, 45 minutes, as long as you can in this. Beer making is a little different. Beer making will have more rests than just this one esterification rest. You got protein rest and other rests in the beer making cycles, and they tend to come from lower temperature up, right? So it's kind of opposite of doing the corn back. But yeah, as it cools off, we can add these malts and use those. And then at the end, it's not going to hurt to use a little bit of glucose, to help make sure that all those, oligosaccharides and trisaccharides and disaccharides get, debranched into single molecules, which makes the yeast very happy and less stress, and the less stress, the better, generally the better flavors. Unless you're trying to intentionally stress them to get a specific flavor, which is kind of advanced distilling, but that's something that they do. But yeah, it's that's for distilling 505, right? So if you have any questions on what I just said and you want clarifications, feel free to ask. I don't mind trying to explain it a different way, because I know it gets a little bit sciencey, but yeah, and that's why, with using this too, you don't have to do your charts. You don't have to say, oh, I need 20% of this 6-row or 30% of 2-row because its diastatic power is this, and do all the calculations. You can now do it and do it based on your flavor, what kind of flavor you want. So I want to run this malted 2-row, but I don't want 30%. It's a little bit too much. I want it to be a little lighter. I like a little bit lighter. So I'm not going to have enough diastatic. No, you can make it up with your high temp alpha and your glucose. So you can change your flavor profiles the way you want it without having to worry about that diastatic conversion power, right? Not JJ. Did you eat a gummy? Going down early, folks. Oh, it is 10. Damn, time flies when you're having fun. Yeah, and once you do it a few times, you won't need those little jars anymore, because you'll be able to smell it coming right off. You'll be like, oh, I know where I'm getting. But the little jars do help a lot, because you don't want to get a big quart jar half full of heads and half full of tails and it just be bad. And man, I could have kept half of that if I just used smaller jars. But those tails definitely contain a lot of alcohol. Um, so if you imagine taking 7 all the way to 14, 15, that's great. You got all your hearts and a little bit of heads, and you're ready to, put it on some wood and age it. But, when it gets to 15 and 16, you're still talking 80, 90, 100 proof a lot of times. So there's a lot of alcohol in there, and your tails, your very little fusel oils in there. And so, it tells you, a lot of your ethanol, acetone, methanol, the very first, but you'll still get little red dots, right, all the way through. You're going to still have touches of 4 shots in there. They never go away entirely. So you're going to get tiny, tiny bits, and it should show red just going down and down, and by the time it gets over to 20, it should be maybe just a few red dots in there. But you should increase the dots all the way across to where you get little lines from 4 all the way to 1, because you still are going to get some 4 shots in to your heads, right? But yeah, your higher molecular weight alcohols and oils, you can get some good and bad flavors out of those. So the higher ones you can age with and get some pretty decent flavors as it goes on down until it gets to sweet water, and then it's basically, most of the oils and a lot of your heavier alcohols and everything's gone, and you're back to almost a distilled water with a little bit of flavor. But you'll never get it to the point where you run out of ethanol, because at a certain point, um, because they're azeotropes, you're just going to get equal amounts. And I think it's like 4% or 4 proof or 4%. One of the two. I think it's 4%, maybe 8 proof. And it's just going to be that on out until the water's boiled off and the alcohol's both boiled off together. And that's shown on this chart. See, as it gets on out there, that's why it doesn't touch that line to the right and to the left, is because once it gets to this point, it'll boil off at equal amounts. And once you get to the other end, it's going to do the same. So your tails will be, it'll start high up here, and then, you're never going to get it all out. So you're never going to run it to where it's just pure water coming out, because there's always going to be a little bit of alcohol still bonded to that, maybe a little bit of methanol as well, and a few of your other azeotrope. Appreciate that, brother. Right, and that's a good point as well. Yeah, making when you're using that hydrometer, it's calibrated for 60 degrees Fahrenheit, right? About room temperature, a little cool. If it's a little bit cool for me. I don't run the AC that much, but it's calibrated for like 60. So you can make slight adjustments for temperature. Whether it's if your mash is cooler than that, it's not going to work very well unless you have some lager yeast or something. But so you have to kind of make some adjustments, and there'll be a little chart that comes with your hydrometer that allow you to, if it's 70 degrees, you need to add so many points, but it's not a whole lot until you make big jumps. But if it's really warm, 110 degrees, it'll be, it's going to be a little bit of difference. So follow the chart that comes with your hydrometer, and it'll help make that, conversion for temperature. I forgot to mention it. Thank you, Clint. Hey, we're here every Tuesday and Saturday, unless I'm at a festival. So if Mikey is driving along to the popcorn, I probably won't be here Saturday. If he's not, I will be. Hear that, Mikey? But if he got Chubby Butt with him, I guess I'm going to sit here on my Chubby Butt and talk. But yeah, we're every Tuesday and Saturday at 8 Eastern. Hop on, bring your questions. We can give you suggestions and help you, pick something based on what distillate you want to do. So if you want to do whiskey, one thing. If you're more interested in vodka, neutrals, you can, do another. Brandies and whiskeys kind of run together. So we help making wine too. So if you're interested in making some wine, we can definitely help out with that. Beer, kind of. I'm not a big beer maker. Never done it with hops. I made a lot of beer for distilling into whiskeys, but I've never done the hop thing and made beers. But we got a few guys in here that are beer makers that can help out and answer any of your beer questions if you want to make beer. Yeah, actually, if you look on the bottom of the screen strolling here, DIY Shine and Steel Building is a Facebook page. Join that. We let everybody in. Don't care who you are. Don't care if you're ATF, whoever. You can come in there and we'll talk about shit just like they're probably watching this now. I don't care. I'm just trying to make the hobby safe and enjoyable for everybody. But yeah, all these charts are going to be in there in the file section. And yeah, they're in the Moonshine Militia page as well in the file section. And if you're not on Facebook and you just hate Facebook, well, try to get up with me and I can email them to you. Yeah, DIY Shine and Steel Building. Sounds awesome. Let me show you another little thing here that is also in there. And you're going to love this. Oh, wait, it's a PDF. Let me open it this way. I have to do it with this. Boom. It was right there and ready. Let me get this out of the way so you can check this out. So this right here, let me get the chat out of the way. So this right here is different mash bills, depending on, you can find your favorite liquor. So here's, was this Evan Williams? We got, I can't even read it. Close my old eyes. Magnifying glass here. Oh. So we've got at the top, we got Ancient Age, Elmer T. Lee, Blanton's, Weller's, William LaRue, Van Winkle, Sazerac. So most all your grain bills are going to be on here. And this is also in the file section. So we got pretty much every liquor out there that'll show you how much corn, wheat, barley, and rye are in there. We also, a lot of us like to throw a little bit of oats in there to soften it up a little bit. And I don't think oats are on this chart. And I don't think any commercial guys, there might be some that use some oats, but it's not on this chart. But yeah, it'll give you the percentage breakdown. But yeah, that sounds perfectly fine. And again, since you're not, now I will say, malted wheat will give you a higher diastatic, and if, as long as it's malted perfectly, than a perfectly malted 6-row, right? So it has a little bit higher diastatic power, so that works really well. And if you get malted wheat and malted barley having 30% like that, it's well more than you're going to need for any diastatic. So, but I would still use maybe half the high temp amylase and half the glucose that it calls for just to help things along. Wouldn't even bother anything if you used it full strength. It doesn't affect your flavor or taste or anything. So it doesn't hurt, but it might not be economical. It might save money not using that much because you might not need that much. But yeah, this chart and all these charts that I share are in the file section. So once you join the group at the very top, you'll see, well, let me see what it says. Let's see. Let me go to this group here. Let me go to DIY. So at the top, you'll see it says discussion, featured members, media, files, and guides. Just go to files and just scroll down through there, and you'll find most all these will be in there. The chart I just showed, I've got a lot of different things we've added in there. Some things were added a long time ago. So, but yeah, most all this stuff will be right in there near the top. We've also got a pretty good PDF book of Stampede Stills used to hand out when they sell you a still. It's got 110 recipes in there. I haven't really gone through a lot of them, but I know a lot of people like the recipes, and beginners trying to use those to help them get a good start. So those are in there as well to help people along with those. But that nothing makes a better recipe than using that hydrometer and experience. What's going on, Frank? Good to see you, brother. Yeah, definitely want to gelatinize your corn. So you're going to do that at like 185. I mean, you can do it at lower temperatures, but it takes a lot longer. So at 185 to 90 degrees, it's about as hot as you want to get without running the risk of scorching. Because once you get to boiling, it gets real hot and you run the risk of scorching. So 185, 90, stirring constantly for 90 minutes to a couple of hours, or steeping it and using like 70% of your water initially, and keep adding 5% every 15 minutes or so to keep that temp up until you get done, and then you just use the rest of your water. And if you have some leftover water, you got good gelatinization, measure that water, dump it out, and then put cold water in there to get it to cool off quicker, because a lot of people will use chillers, because there's nothing worse than waiting for hours and hours and hours for your mash to cool before you add the next, before you start adding your barley and your adjunct grains. So a lot of times, to speed that process up, you can drop a chiller in there cool it down quicker, so you can get down to the 150, 55 degree range that you want to start adding some of these other things in based on the charts here. So, about 155 is the end of the green here, and that's about the temperature that you start denaturing your alpha. And that's about the temperature with this powder between 150 55 that you had to keep it for an hour and a half to 2 hours, 3 with the powder. It was tough. So, yeah. No problem, brother. Yeah, we'll be here every Tuesday and Saturday unless we're out partying and festivaling, in which case you should be there with us and sampling some of this. Let's go on, Matt. Good to see you, brother. Appreciate propane. Me and Clint both, man. We both rock. We rock the socks off, man. Yeah, let's do another shot for Shadow for sure. Hope you're getting to feeling better, brother. You get them directly off Amazon. I mean, Phil Billy has them though. PhilBillyMoonshine.com and get you all the malted grains. You pay a little bit more on Amazon. Phil Billy, biggest issue with mailing any like corns or grains or stuff, 50 pounds costs a lot of money to ship. So, a lot of people, go to some of their brew stores, or you can go to Phil Billy's if you're close. You can pick it up, but his pricing, I think, includes shipping. So it might seem a little higher than most, but when you figure it's got shipping figured in, it's pretty competitive with everybody. But yeah, and you can malt your own. It's not real hard to do. There's a lot of good videos on it, and we can sit and talk about it and go through the process. I don't have a lot of visual aids for that. I think I will come up with some visual aids that'll show you when to stop. So you look at the little roots coming out. So the malting process is basically germination. So you're germinating a seed until the root comes out, right? Radical or root. And once that root comes out, depending on what you're germinating or malting, once it gets to a certain size, you want to stop it immediately. You want to get it away from any moisture. You want to air dry it without much heat. So you can use a little bit, 100, 110 is not going to hurt anything. You're not going to denature anything, but you want to try to fluff dry it really quickly and dry up those little roots, and those little roots will fall off. They're kind of very bitter, the roots. So you want those to fall off. And so you can tumble them dry, not in your dryer, but you can make a little wheel. But most people just make a big board with screen, and they just spread it out on the screen board with like 2x4 frames with that old plastic screening that you can buy, stapled all the way around, and spread it out and just blow fan over it or put it outside and keep the birds off of it. It's tough, but let it air dry and keep fanning it. And eventually it'll dry, and you can tumble it in your hands. You can kind of, move it around and take a hair dryer on cool and blow a lot of those roots that once they dry, they break off, and just blow them away, get rid of most of them as you can. And then just grind them, let them dry, and then grind them up and crack them. If you want to, a little less flavor, you can crack them, a little less worrisome when it comes to clearing, but this is for Shadow. No problem, Greg. I enjoy it, man. I enjoy helping everybody in the craft and passing on the knowledge and hoping it stays alive, man. Keep the craft alive. Going on, Chris? Good to see you, brother. What's up, Duckster? Good to see you, brother. So what you been up to, Matt? You out here, Powder? Yeah, have a good one, man. I'm a little bit behind, but not too bad. I'm trying to stay up. I'm doing a little better. Trying to keep Clint's fingers from getting all worn out. If I get real behind, it wears him out because he'll answer it. Because people want to get a immediate answer, and we understand that. And Clint will try to give you, an abbreviated short answer, and I give the long-winded answer. But we'll get you taken care of regardless. Yeah, brew supply stores, even Amazon. Let me see what they got going on. I haven't bought any off Amazon in a long time. I used to before I got no Fieldbilly. I think it's about $2 a pound last time I bought it on there. $2.50, $1.50. Here's a pound for 15 a pound. That's pricey. Man. Well, I can honestly say the price on Amazon has gone up tremendously. Okay, here's 6-row uncrushed malt, 10-pound bag, 32, 3 to 20 a bag. That's getting more realistic because I used to pay around 2, a little over 2 last time I bought. And now we can get 2-rows. So generally, most of your beer makers and most of your whiskey makers, they do prefer the flavor of a 2-row over a 6-row. But in America here, we use the 6-row for distilling because of its diastatic power, and it really, you have to have a pretty good palate to taste the difference, and a lot of people can. And for those using that 2-row, it means a lot. But as far as corn, you can get that locally. Just, regular deer corn. Just make sure they don't add deer nutrients and minerals and supplements for the deer's health and for horn growth and all that. Just get corn. Just get yellow dent corn kernels or cracked corn. Don't fool with any of the rest of the stuff. I don't care what they say. I don't even like the someone asked one time about the apple flavored, and will that make a good apple? No, don't do it. And if it's got pellets in it, hail to the no. But even, a lot of the sweet feed, I tend to stay away from those. If you want to do a sweet feed, make your own. Get some decent molasses or sorghum and mix it with your own corn. That way you're getting, you can control what goes into it. 10-pound bag, 2-row, $2.90. So that's $2.90 a pound. So yeah, it's on Amazon and free shipping on there. So I think it's pretty close to Phil's prices too, though. And I know corn wise, he can get a lot of stuff that he gets a lot of heirloom corn you're not going to find anywhere else, most anywhere else. So definitely a good person to get to know and an awesome dude. So let me see what he's got on his grains. Let's see. On fieldbillymoonshine.com. Let's see. Corn. I think you'll probably have a lot of his grains on here. Yeah, it's anywhere from $30 a bag to 150. So you're looking, depending on how much you get, looking at a few bucks a pound, but that's with shipping. I'm pretty sure that's with shipping too. So you're going to go about $3 a pound on a 50-pound bag, and that's a good price for the heirloom corn. But you'll find why I like yellow dent is because yellow dent can be, 8, 10, 12, unless you get it directly from a farmer, and then you can get it for like 4 to 6 for a 50-pound bag, or you can get these mega bags. So it's good to, support your local farmers too, and know Philbilly and get stuff from him. He's got oats. He's got rye. He's got pretty much a lot of different heirlooms too, a lot of good stuff. So chocolate malts. Also got really good molasses. I know where they source that from. That's a really high grade molasses if you want to do some good rums. I know where he gets that from, and it's the premium. I think Wes is the one that found that deal. But yeah, he's got quite a bit of stuff there. Check him out. A lot of varieties that you just hard to find anywhere else. And he's a pretty good feller, and it helps, feed his family. That's his job, that's what he's dedicated his life to. He builds steel and sells grains and a lot of accessories, and pretty much custom make a lot of stuff for you too if you have a special order. He also does a lot of bever, accessories to sit on top of the football steel when you take that football off and you got that 2-inch ferrule. He's got whiskey caps and other things that you can buy to put on there, and copper to replace those footballs with if you want to do that as well. Yeah, I always make him sweet feed. They put a lot of stuff in there. Most generally sweet feeds are made for your livestock, and a lot of times they'll supplement it with minerals and vitamins and other shit that really don't taste good in your mash or distillate. So, yeah, it's best to make him. And two, I know people that worked at some of the mills and stuff, and they're like, that sweet feed and a lot of that stuff is what a broom and a dustpan gets off the floor. They just throw it in there and mix it all together. They'll throw in some minerals, and it's just not the best, not what you want. Yeah, I think Bucky's has like yellow dent for like $7-8 for a 50-pound bag. So if you're getting yellow dent, I probably wouldn't go to field, right? No, no offense, Phil, but you could just go to Tractor Supply and any farmer feeding supply or any farmer and get it. But if you want heirlooms, you're not going to find a lot of these heirloom corns pretty much anywhere else unless you know somebody that's growing it or know some other grain dealer. But yeah, I like the big benefit of us doing craft distilling in small batches like we do. We can afford to do heirloom corns. We can afford to experiment. If you're a big craft distiller or a big distillery, you just can't afford to spend that kind of money on an heirloom corn because it's very expensive. So most of them, all your Pappy Van Winkle, all the finest bourbons that you ever drank come from Yellow Dent. They can't afford to do much anything else, or just their regular, bottom shelf would be $100 a bottle. If they had to made it with heirloom, it's just too expensive, not cost economical. Right, great idea. If you got some buddies, and that's one thing share the hobby with your buddies. Once you start making some of this shit, wow, how the hell did you do this? Like my wine, when I first started sharing wine with a lot of people, because I'm a little bit more open with the wine than the shine due to legalities. But yeah, man, they're like, when are you going to teach lessons how to make wine? We want to come to the house and show us how to do this because they love it. And it's like it's easy, man. You don't have to come. I can sit and talk you through it. It's very easy. But I may end up doing some of that wine making for some of my friends and locally. Yeah, it varies. You can get it from 8 to 12 average. Farmers though, they'll put it on you, man. If you want that yellow dent, they'll just wheel in the damn conveyor belt and just fill your truck bed full if that's what you want, man. They're happy as hell to get rid of it, because it's money. They don't have to bag it up and worry about middleman and all that. They get these big ass bags too. You can take totes in there, these big, 250-gallon totes. Cut the tops out of them and set them in the back of your truck. They'll fill them up, man, till your axles break. Yeah, that's a really good price. Someplace like that. That's kind of like a little cooperative thing that they get the shipping rates down. Yeah. Well, the thing about it is if you get a good conversion, you don't need sugar. And actually, it's cheaper to get sugar from corn than from sugar. For distilling, it's cheaper to convert it and get it out of corn. A little bit more work, but if you don't consider the time, the time probably makes it probably about even. But that's why all your ethanol for your automobiles and stuff, they don't make that with sugar. They make that with corn because it's so cheap to make that way. I might have, I know I've gone to that before. Let me see. So would this be under flour or fresh produce? What am I? They got a lot of stuff on here. Supplements. Here we go. Flours, grains, beans, nuts, and more. Cool. Beans, rice, oats, nuts, and seeds. I don't see corn though. Fuel plants use sugar. Are you sure about that? Most of them I've seen have been corn to ethanol. Like I said, it's changed. Back in the day, man, it's just always been corn. I'm still looking at Azure though. I'm trying to find their coins. Maybe it's on animal feed. Yeah. I'm not finding the corn, Clint. Okay, here we go. Well, I mean, whole yellow corn, animal feed, organic, 32.03 for 50 pound, and that I don't know. That's You can get that a lot cheaper locally for sure, but I don't see any heirloom stuff. I have to spend some time looking at it and seeing what all they got. They got a lot of stuff though, so I mean it's going to take some time. I'm just searching through all this stuff. They got a lot of products. They got a lot of stuff. Yeah. Yep. Oh, I mean, it's very competitive with any place I've ever seen, and for the variety you can get, and it's locally grown. Right up there next to him in Ohio, he's got a deal worked out with a farmer. They work together. That farmer, plants all these heirloom corns, so it's good and fresh every year. Yeah, yeah. They don't have no taste buds. They don't care if it's hot or not. They don't care if it's sugar shine or corn shine. They'll run just fine. But yeah, a lot of people don't realize those alcohol dragsters, man. People are like, oh, you can't run a car on that. Have you ever seen an alcohol burning drag racer? I'm pretty sure you can. Yeah, he's got a good price. Yeah, he's got real good prices, and I think it includes shipping. So people, oh, that's a little bit higher than I see. Like okay, but look at the $40 shipping on that bag. And then add that to the cost and tell me what you're paying a pound. Oh well, yeah, I see it. So yeah, and it's good. It's really good quality stuff too. I know the farmer he gets it from. Some of it. That farmer doesn't grow all the different varieties. So he's got his feelers out, and he's getting it directly from the farmers to keep those prices down. I thought it's funny as hell. It wasn't, but maybe a couple of years ago, had a guy on here, and he was buying 50-pound bags of corn, right? And he was packaging them up in small packages as seeds and selling them for like $5 or $10 a pack or a bag of seed. Like, bro, I can get that same bag, 50 pounds for $7 at Bucky's, and you're gonna break that up into like 500 little teeny packs and sell them for 500 for five each. It's that was crazy, and people are buying that shit and planting it, and I'm like, you do realize that that's the same corn you get when you get a 50-pound bag or a 20-pound bag from Phil or anybody else. That's seed that you can plant, right? People just don't know, man. If they didn't grow up around farms, I guess. Yeah, it was, man. They were it was crazy. But I mean, that's what seed people do. You could take a people I saw this on Facebook last year, maybe year before. One of my friends was asking, where can I get some good, bell pepper seeds? And I want to start a garden this year. And I'm like, well, let's go to the grocery store and buy a damn bell pepper, cut it open, and save the seeds, dry them out, and plant them. Well, I never thought of that. And I'm like, yeah, you get all kinds of seeds for $1, and you get to enjoy the bell pepper as well. They're like, wow, I think I'll do that. And I'm like, unless it's a hybrid, it'll be fine. You'll grow the shit out of it. Well, I mean, it's just, it's not necessarily unethical. I mean, that's capitalism, bro. I mean, that's what it's all about. As long as there's a fool out there to buy it that don't know, I mean, but yeah, anytime in this house we cut open peppers, I got bags and bags of seeds, man. If the shit ever hits the fan, this is one fat boy that will stay fat. I am not going hungry, man. I got enough seeds. All I need to do is kill a few groundhogs and squirrels and rabbits, and I'll be able to eat my meat. Go out and kill a few deer or elk. Didn't make the elk drawing this year, man. I put in for the lotto and I didn't get picked. Didn't get picked, damn it. I'm prepared. I'm well prepared. I just don't have my bug out place yet. I guess I can go to Pike County and survive, but there's too many survivalists there. It'd be too much competition. Suburbs would be pretty dangerous. A lot of starving people coming out of the city wanting to steal everything that they didn't prepare for. Start catching people in your cornfields, eating your field corn right off the cob. Yep. I'm hoping for the best, preparing for the worst. That's the motto, isn't it? Yeah, times are looking pretty tough, man. You look at Europe, what's going on. I'm not talking to, not going to mention Democrat, Republican, but just look at what's going on in Europe right now, and they're starting to realize a lot of the mistakes they made. I think I read in the news today, France were like, well, violence does appear to be escalating. Duh, dumbass. What slapped you in the face all of a sudden? It's been escalating for many, many years since you opened your borders. You can't allow third world people into your country and expect your country not to be a third world country, because once you let them in, that's what you become. Nothing against them, but it's easier for us to help them if they're in place and us send the food there than then to come in and drain our resources, so we can't be a productive enough country to take care of them, right? That's the way it's got to work. Yeah. Yeah, media, is really pushing it. And there's a lot of people out there like Soros. He's been doing this for many, many decades, and he creates political unrest and creates division in countries. I'm not talking about here. I'm talking about in other countries. He's a puppet master, and this dude has done this for many times, and he deals in their currency. So he'll invest in a currency. He'll take a country and turn it into turmoil, and he's done that quite a few times, like Greece and other places, and create turmoil. When they turmoil starts, their value, the dollar goes to nothing. Right, their money's worth nothing. He'll buy the shit out of their money, and then and work with the U.S. government. Well, we need to go in and help them, and so he'll grease a few politicians' palms, and you'd be surprised how cheap they can be bought on both sides. And they'll create, oh, let's send some money to Greece or whatever country, and let's help shore them up and get them back to normal. And let's send the military in, straighten things out, or let's get everything straightened. And then once things get straightened out, peaceful again, that money skyrockets, and whatever he invested in for a penny now becomes $10. So he's made 1,000% profit, and you can't make that on the stock market. So he's manipulated currencies like that in a lot of small countries for many, many decades, and he's one of the worst humans. He's the devil. He's one of the worst humans on this planet, because that's what he does. That's how he made his money. Yeah, I'm not going to mention any specific politicians' names. I'm not going to say Democrat, Republican, but it's common sense, and that common sense shouldn't have to have a D or an R next to it. But I was a lifelong long Democrat, and the Democrat Party at this point in time is not the same as it was when I grew up. That's just a fact. They've shifted way left from where they were. Now, that spot where I was is now an independent, kind of leaning right. That's just how far they've shifted. But hopefully we'll get things lined out and get a few of these clowns and crazy kooks out, because there's a lot of Democrats out there that they're kind of going with the flow to keep the jobs, right? So they're like, shit's getting crazy, but I guess I got to go along with it until hopefully we can get it straightened out, and then I can go back to being normal again. So they got to kind of go along with it, or else they get voted out, and then things just get worse because there's not a normal person in there to help balance things. So yeah, Clint's pregnant. I knew it. Yeah, that's why, I've been talking, and Lisa and Mark Morgan, they Lisa's very knowledgeable, and she hadn't chimed in tonight, but Lisa's very knowledgeable in plants and a lot of herbal remedies and things like that. And, you know, I grew up that way as well. Don't know near as much as Lisa in any stretch of imagination, but my grandmother and all of them did the holistic kind of things and canning. We do a lot of canning here and putting stuff up. A lot of people are lost. They don't know how to blanch and put stuff up and freeze it. They don't know how to can. Yeah, I'm about pregnant too. I look about 9 months, to be honest with you. Yep. Yeah, we got to take care of yourself, man. I know you're just kidding, man, but I would. Amanda probably watches this a lot. She watches this show a lot, and so does Jay. So I don't think they're gonna think that's very funny. Just saying. And I'm gonna bring her on here, and when I do, you're gonna be in for it, Clint. I know you do, Miss Tammy. That's what I was saying. Little birdie told me somebody's got a birthday coming up. Yeah, I don't have a nuke shelter, but I do live close enough to some caves. I might be able to make it in time. Yep, in about 1 hour, it'll be Miss Tammy's birthday. Yeah, that's fine. When you tuned in and said hello earlier, I said, "Yep, somebody's got a birthday coming up." I was talking about you. I know sometimes people don't want to mention when their birthday is. A lot of times that's a password. So everybody's like, "Okay, let's see, is their birthday?" Logging in, hacking all your stuff. It's crazy what people do. So sometimes it's not good to use your birthday as a password. If you do, change it. Well, I got a basement that's pretty much mostly submerged, but it's got a, you know, I'd like to, I'd really like to get one of those shipping containers and encase it in concrete underground and have a vent and filtered vent and fresh water supply coming to it. But yeah, living in a good area of the country is a good plus, to start out with, because the further you're away from the winds and the way it's going to shift from where they're going to hit, the better off you're going to be. But if you live close to some caves, it doesn't matter though. I mean, I don't know if I want to live a nuclear holocaust and then deal with. I do have some iodine and stuff for the throat issue. Speaking of which, goddamn, I was harsh for bringing that 140. That's 140. I know it is. That's awesome. Seems like a little safe, but yeah, I got a basement that's underground and concrete block wall. It's not poured; it's concrete block. But yeah, it's I like to have a little container off my basement that's encased fully. Not if you encase it properly. I mean, you're just using that basically as a form, and you're pouring concrete and you're still reinforcing it and you pour concrete around it. I'm not talking about just putting a container in there and then pouring dirt on it. No, ain't the fool. Yeah, that's right. Let's get ready to rumble, man. Ready for Thunderdome, baby. It's gonna get real. Yeah, you could block up just using that. Using it as basically a Faraday cage, having that metal encasement to help block a lot of the neutrinos, and then your concrete, and then you could probably paint it with some lead based paint. Yeah, that means you're a target, bro. Food, seed, and ammo. That's right, brother. And I've got it. You got to have something to shoot that ammo through too. So you got to get you a few guns, but and then you're going to have to protect it all, unfortunately, because everybody else that didn't prepare is going to come want to take what you got. And if it gets too bad, they might be the next thing going on Clint's barbecue. Yep, barter shine. That's right. And distilling. You might have to distill water and get some of that shit out. And we may end up having to use lead mesh to get out the deuterium and all the heavy metals and shit and bond to the lead. Maybe the lead be least for worries. Is that all? You need to stock up, bro. I'm kidding, man. That should take care of a few of them. Yep. Having a little bit of lead be handy in a mold. Oh yeah, it'd be still reinforced and encased in concrete. I just use the the shipping containers of basically a mold and a form and vent. Yeah, I already said filtered vent and water plumbed in. It'd be nice, man. I'm all up on that. Yeah, you got to have ventilation, good ventilation. Yeah, I think if shit hit the fan, mold would probably be at the lower spectrum of my concerns. But I do have the iodine tablets that you put in your water to help keep the cancer out of your throats, and keep your glands and everything in order. If you don't know, you need to start looking at researching on iodine tablets that are used for that purpose. You get some; they're pretty cheap if you buy them. You know, let's see what they got on Amazon. I'm trying to think of. Yeah, potassium iodide tablets. That's what you want. Potassium iodide tablets. Nuclear radiation protection. And I've got them already. You should get them. They last. They got a pretty good shelf life on them, and it helps your thyroid glands, and a lot of your glands, because that's one of the first things that'll, when you breathe that stuff in, that's one of the first things that's going to get cancers and stuff. So you need it. Potassium iodide tablets. Had to look it up, but I could get a bottle of it in about 15 seconds. There's on the other side of that wall a lot of my other gear, survival stuff. I've got a med kit that I've got stitching. I can stitch. I've got cleaning, sanitizer, everything. Got a lot of medicine, all my medicines that I need. That's right. A country girl, man, is what you need. They know how to put that stuff up and live and help you hunt and skin. Well, it's just a frame. I mean, it would be the same as any poured concrete structure. It's just using that as the mold. But yeah, I definitely would have ventilation, and drainage all the way around it, and sump pumps and generators and air in and out. Yeah, I mean, you talking old dummy son. But yeah, for those out there, definitely research though. But I've researched it a lot. But it basically would just be a form instead of using plywood and for a poured concrete foundation like they do, and to deck it like they do. I just use it'd be a lot easier and cheaper just to use a container, and that metal would also help deflect some of the radiation, neutrinos, and other things that might get you. All right, we're getting crazy. Talking about the end of times, man. What a few drinks will do to somebody. But it is true, and it's something people need to think about, keeping some beans. And it's not just for apocalyptic times or anything like that. You remember what happened during COVID? Hell, you couldn't even find toilet paper, couldn't get yeast, couldn't get beans, you couldn't go to the store and get anything. In just a few days, our whole distribution center went to shit. Couldn't get certain items. So, save up on toilet paper. And we know now that that's one of the first things to go, right? I always thought it'd be bread and milk. No, that TP, man. I got you. I got you. Well, as long as it's a mountain gal now, that's good. That's country girl. But yeah, man, TP, man, that who would have known? Who would have thunk it? But we had a little test run of what happens, right? And I've seen, ice storms here, no power for a week, no getting to the store for a week. What are you gonna do? Some people don't have enough food to get them by that long. Some people don't have generators. You know, you're gonna freeze to death and have no food, or you're gonna walk to the store in the bitter cold and through the ice and make it back with that bag of groceries before it freezes or somebody takes it from you. I mean, it's our system is a lot more fragile than people realize. We've gotten very lax and comforted in life, and that's kind of makes us naive about third world people too. I'm not putting them down, but everybody tends to think everybody's like us. Everybody's, we're peaceful, not mean and nice spirited and kind people and generous and will help the other person. No, they're not like that at all. And everybody thinks that everybody's like us because we've grown up around each other. And, if you haven't traveled all over the world and seen a lot of the brutality that goes on in some of these places, there's a lot of videos. It's a lot safer to watch those than to travel to these places, but they ain't like us. They're not like us at all. They don't have as much regard for human life as we do. They don't have the moral fiber that we do at all, so they're not like us. Hurricanes, I've been through those. Yeah, wipe places out. You're not going anywhere for weeks or months. You can't. The roads are blocked. Where you can walk, you can get to. People can't get to you. They take weeks. So you got to prepare for that kind of thing. You got to have enough food. You need to get a generator, and have fuel. Get some, if you have to, get some little solar panels, so you can power certain things. Especially if you live in an area with a lot of aerial lines, not a lot of underground, and most of the aerial that are, in that last place we lived, every time the wind blew hard, man, the power went down. The ice storm took us down for over a week. I was running a generator for me and a couple other houses, and I had to tell them, I fortunately had gas heat, so I was only paying the electric just to spin the fan, in my heater. But, I told my neighbors, I will keep your refrigerators running, but you're not to hook up any electric heaters or any of that. You're going to have to stay warm, burn some wood in your fireplaces and bundle up. But, I can't afford 15, 2,000, 3,000 watts per, household. This generator doesn't do it, but I did keep the refrigerators going. So I ran I ran the extension. One neighbor got kind of rosy about it. He got a little red with me. He's like, why the hell can't I? I'm like, buddy, if you want to buy a goddamn generator, get your ass out there. I'm trying to help you keep your food fresh so you can have something to eat over the next week. He wanted me to run his heater. Why can't you run mine? Because I bought the generator. I'm going to heat my house. You're going to have to worry about yourself on that. Go buy a generator. But, finally he came around, but he's a crotchety old man. He's an ass. He was an ass. His dad was such a nice person too. And he inherited that house from his dad. And it was night and day. But yeah, he still saw the light. I'm like, do you want your refrigerator to run or not? That's the question. I still think that somebody's put a splitter and a little heater on there, but yeah, man. That's the beautiful thing about a basement, man. It'll stay cool until it gets about 100 degrees outside, and then it's mid to upper 70s. Still still cool, but not cold. It'll get in the 80s if it gets 100 plus outside. But it's still good with a fan. In the 80s, you turn a fan on, you're fine. I am. Anne's fine too. She grew up in Florida, so she grew up in a trailer in Florida. So she grew up in an oven. Yep. All right, y'all. We're going to go ahead and call her a night. I appreciate everybody for tuning in, and we will see you all if I don't go to Popcorn Sutton Jam Saturday the 6th. And for those that you live close by, definitely go by the Popcorn Sutton Jam. This weekend is going to be a good time. Moonshine Militia will be there. Phil and, or not Phil won't be there, but Tom and Damon will be there. They're the Tennessee connection. They both live down there in Tennessee, so they'll be there. I'd say old Chad is on here earlier, probably roll in there as well. So we'll have quite a few people there. Hopefully I can get down there and make it, but I'm definitely going to try to, if I can't this year, next year for sure. Because I it's not too far. It's only like 4.5 hours from me. So, but a little bit more than I can drive. They're a want to drive. Yep, they do. They certainly do see shine. They definitely do. It's you can definitely judge their character by the adverse times. And that's for sure. It'll build character. It'll show your ass. It's one or the other. I knew Clint was a damn troll. He lived under a bridge. Yeah, they definitely can. They definitely can thrive. Third worlders, that's their way of living. They scratch and dig for everything they got. That's how they live. And and it I guess it makes you cold when you don't you lose compassion. It's all dog eat dog kind of thing. All right, everybody, have a great week. We will see you Saturday the 6th, unless I'm down there in Tennessee, in which case, if I am, I'll catch y'all next Tuesday. But most likely, if Mikey don't come get me, I'm going to be here. So everybody have a great week, and we will see you this weekend. Till then, shine on. Peace out. Love y'all. See you Saturday.